confusion and delay.
You have caused
Confusion and delay.
that is the pure face prejudice.
Daisy is just the ultimate thought. Daisy is just the ultimate thought.
Your impatience has caused confusion and delay. This storm has caused confusion and delay. You are causing confusion and delay. You cause confusion and delay.
26 years old and you can't even drive? I can. Are you stupid, eh? Are you a stupid fool? Well, why can't you drive then? You can't even drive. Bit grey today.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the second Deepest Law today. Extremely rare occurrence to have two on the same day, but in retrospect, it may have been a bit ambitious for me to get from 1927 to 2023 in one stream. However, I have reason to believe that this next stretch from 1950 onwards is going to go a little bit more quickly than the last stream. And that is because of my superior cultural knowledge of this period. I have a decent knowledge of political and historical events and so on and so forth before 1950. But in terms of like movies, music albums, culturally significant things, the waters I have swum in my whole life have been the post-war, the boomer truth era, essentially. So we're on much more familiar turf here. I'm not going to have to go like looking up at quite as many things as last stream, although I do think that it's quite interesting to see what sort of stuff we come across along the way. So I'm still going to be looking up some things, but I think that just off the top of my head, like 1977, well, Star Wars came out. It's going to be George Lucas, stuff like that, whereas these things don't trip off the tongue as quickly when you're dealing with like 1936. It's just further away from our cultural memory, I suppose. Now, if you missed the first stream, I'll quickly try to get you up to speed. The idea of this was inspired by Taylor Swift winning Time Person of the Year, and me then looking over Time Person of the Year and finding that it's been a hideous mess since it started. And we're basically going to correct the historical record. I have also added a second award for culture per year, which was inspired by the fact that Taylor Swift is the only singer ever to win it, which means that Elvis and the Beatles and Bob Dylan and basically any other singer, Bowie, none of them won it. So I wanted to redress that as well. So just to quickly going through what we've done so far. 27, Lindbergh and Fritz Lang. 28, Henry Ford and Walt Disney. 29, Pope Pius XI and Al Capone. 1930, Mahatma Gandhi and Will H. Hayes. 31, Stalin and Bela Lugosi. 32, FDR, Aldous Huxley. 33, Adolf Hitler and Marion C. Cooper. 34, Adolf Hitler and Frank Capra. 35, Mussolini and the Parker brothers, who invented the Monopoly board game. 36, Francisco Franco and Charlie Chaplin. 37, Hirohito, the Emperor of Japan, and Pablo Picasso. 38, Adolf Hitler and Walt Disney. Hitler winning his third award, Disney his second. And by the way, bold means that they actually won the real life Time Person of the Year as well. Okay. 39, Joseph Stalin and Victor Fleming. And that was one of the things that blew my mind on the last stream, was the fact that Victor Fleming directed not only The Wizard of Oz, but also Gone with the Wind in the same year. I had never known that those two films were directed by the same guy, which I find frankly staggering. 1940, Winston Churchill and Ernest Hemingway. 41, FDR again and Orson Welles. 42, Stalin again and Bing Crosby. 43, Georgy Zukov and Ingrid Bergman. 44, Eisenhower and Enid Blyton. 45, Harry Truman and George Orwell. 46, Clement Attlee, the Labour Prime Minister, and Jimmy Stewart. 47, Gandhi again and David Lean. 48, David Ben-Gurion, the first Prime Minister of Israel, and David Lean again in a rare back-to-back cultural achievement for Lean. 49, Mao Zedong and George Orwell. Just before we get going, we're going to continue from 1950 onwards. A couple of things. First thing I'll mention is that my Christmas sale, Vax Glide 2 promo code, gets you 25% off all courses at the academic agency. You know, get your loved one the Trivium, and they can brush up on their writing and grammar and logic and rhetorical skills. After Christmas or over Christmas, it's actually a good time to do the courses. Lots of people have told me they have done them in previous years. They bought it at Christmas and did it, over the Christmas break. It should improve your performance at work and various other things. So yeah, pick up a course. The other thing I'll say is that if you missed the first stream, the way we're going to do this is that I go to the actual Time Person of the Year for that year. The chat votes stick or twist, and then if they twist on the political front, we then come up with a replacement, and then sometimes we also have votes on, if there's more than one person, we'll have in the chat. You can participate by taking part in the votes. Most of the votes are just writing in. If it's too close to call, I hold an actual poll. Okay. For example, Arthur Miller lost out to George Orwell, and so did Tennessee Williams, I think. They both lost polls. And that is also, David Lean was a firm favorite with the chat. So that's how he ended up winning too as well. All right, so let us start. It's 1950, and the actual winner, the actual winner of the 1950 Time Person of the Year is the American Fighting Man. The American Fighting Man. I mean, come on. Ridiculous. So I'm not even gonna ask the chat if we're gonna stick or twist, because that is frankly ridiculous. Okay, so I'm just gonna have a look to see what else was going on in 1950. The International Police Association becomes the largest in the world. The UK recognizes the People's Republic of China. Mao won in 49, of course. Israel recognizes the People's Republic of China. Finland recognizes China, etc., etc. Chiang Kai-shek is re-elected as president of the Republic of China. Don't know how much that meant in 1950. And what else happened? The first Volkswagen Type 2 rolls off the assembly line. The British, the Belgians held a referendum in 1950, which showed 57.7% support for the return of King Leopold III as king. British comic Eagle launched. Apartheid was passed in South Africa, formally segregating the races. Bahia became the third president of Turkey. I mean, I'm starting to see why they went for the American Fighting Man, because fuck all happened in 1915 by the looks of things. Uruguay won the World Cup. Winston Churchill supports the idea of a pan-European army allied with Canada and America. Boo. See, Churchill was always a monumental twat in every single way. An attack by the North Korean forces was repelled at the Battle of the Nam River. So the Korean War started. And I want to zoom in on that Korean War because I feel like Kim Il-sung, the eternal leader of North Korea still, probably is the Time Person of the Year. I mean, they've given it to the American fighting man, which is a cope, basically. It's Kim Il-sung. I think Kim Il-sung announces North Korea's presence on the world stage by attacking, by starting the Korean War. Right. Yeah, I'm just going to go with Kim Il. I don't see another, unless the chat come up with someone, I don't really see another candidate for 1950. I think it's Kim Il-sung. And considering that Kim Il-sung is still many years past his actual death in 1994, is still the eternal president of North Korea, that is a significant achievement. Who else dies and remains the leader? That is a supreme achievement in great manning, I would say. So Kim Il-sung, I think, is our 1950 Time Person of the Year on the political side. Now, on the cultural side, it's going to be a bit difficult for me because unless I'm very much mistaken, one of my all-time favorite films was released in 1950, starring the avatar of this channel, George Sanders, Betty Davis, the film debut of Marilyn Monroe, directed by Joseph L. Mankiewicz, and that is All About Eve. One of the best films ever. It's going to be difficult for me to overlook that, even though it's a very biased pick by me. I will just double check what books came out in 1950, books published in 1950. So Doris Lessing. Ooh, shit. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis came out in that year. Oh, fuck a duck. It's going to be difficult not to give it to C.S. Lewis, isn't it? What other years did the Chronicles of Narnia come out? I mean, Prince Caspian came out in 1951. Can we give it in 51? Oh. Curses. I'll just have a look to see what musicians were around. With the highest selling record of 1950 was none in the kind of mega category that I could see. Patti Page's Tennessee Waltz sold 10 million copies. Nah, it's nothing. Rubs. Okay. Oh, I'm so pissed off. Okay, chat. I don't know why I'm doing this. Chat. Joseph L. Mankiewicz for All About Eve or C.S. Lewis. Vote now. I'm really pissed off about this. Fuck's sake. It's basically unanimous. All right. Fair enough. Fuck's sake. Okay. I'll get over it. Don't worry. Don't get over it. Yeah. Yes. Okay, fair enough. All right, so the actual time person of the year in 1951 was Mohammad Mossadegh, the Prime Minister of Iran, who expelled the Western oil companies, starting the Abadan crisis, and essentially nationalized Iranian oil. Now, that's a pretty significant moment in history. But the question is Mossadegh the politically most significant man in the entire world in 1951? I'm just having a look to see who else was around. This may be one where we stick, unless I can see anyone or anyone else who jumps out. There's a lot of stuff about the Rosenbergs. There's a lot of stuff about the Rosenbergs because they were convicted of conspiracy to commit espionage and sentenced to death during the Second Red Scare in McCarthyism. Yeah, the Rosenbergs correctly sentenced to death. Correctly. What else? NATO accepts Greece and Turkey as members, which remains an absolutely baffling move, if you ask me. Judy Garland was around. Winston Churchill was re-elected Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Boo. A month before his 77th birthday. Boo. Juan Perón re-elected in Argentina. This is so much less exciting than what was going on in the 30s and 40s, isn't it? You know, Marshall Plan expires. IBM was formed. So, all right, I'm going to ask Jack, Mossadegh, stick or twist? I think it's a stick, to be honest. Why is NASA in the shortlist? What did NASA do in 51? NASA, what did he do? I don't see NASA. He does not come up in the filleted Wikipedia highlights of 1951. What did NASA do in 51? Yeah, I think it's a stick. This is our first Iranian. Reza Shah was passed over for the Mustache Man. For Mussolini last time in 1935. But we have got our first Iranian on the board, Mohammad Mossadegh, a man still talked about to this day. Such was the international situation he caused with his nationalization of the oil. Now, in terms of the cultural side, what sort of films were out in 51? African Queen came out. John Huston. Elia Kazan was in Streetcar Named Desire. Directed Streetcar Named Desire. That means Marlon Brando had his famous stellar moment, in Streetcar. Vivian Leigh had an amazing turn as Blanche Dubois in Streetcar Named Desire. Katharine Hepburn was in African Queen. Humphrey Bogart was in African Queen. I feel like it may be looking like one of them. Mark Rothko had painting number 6 came out in 1951. I don't imagine Rothko being that popular here, but he was a significant artist. Don't see much in the way of music in 51. Let me just see what RY Rate My Music's best album of 1951 is. According to this, it's going to be some hideous jazz, I'm sure of it. Yeah, Duke Ellington is also. Ella Fitzgerald sings Gershwin. Evola turning in his grave, of course. All right, yeah, I'm not giving it to Duke Ellington. Fuck all of that. I think it's between Marlon Brando and Vivian Leigh, to be honest. I mean, when was Brando in The Wild One? That's the one that really kind of captured the imagination of that generation of, like, Marlon Brando was like the hero of all of the boomer artists because he was a little bit older than all of them. Wild One was 53. We could hold off giving it to Brando. He's definitely going to win it at one point. All right, so we've got, we're going to have a vote. Brando, Vivian Leigh, Rothko, or the painter, or Humphrey Bogart. Ella Fitzgerald, the fat black kind of prototype Lizzo. Rothko's picking up more votes than I expected. What did Walt Disney do in 51? What did Disney do in 51? Spastica. Disney's already won it twice. Oh yeah, Mossadegh needs to be bolder because he did actually win it. That's a good point. I mean, the Disney Alice in Wonderland is good, and I watched it hundreds of times as a kid. But you can't just be giving out Time Person of the Year for releasing Disney's Alice in Wonderland. It's not good enough. All right, it looks like Rothko is winning. That's a very surprising and cultured turn for the chat. So Mark Rothko, it is Mark Rothko wins Time Person of the Year for 1951, defeating Marlon Brando and various other big movie stars. All right, so 1952, the actual Time Person of the Year was Queen Elizabeth II. That was the year of her coronation. Now, I should mention that it is difficult to overestimate what a huge global event that 1952 coronation was. Much bigger than Charles's coronation in terms of what a big deal it was all around the world. So it's going to be like, she's strong, I would say, Elizabeth, for 52. It was a very big deal. Also kind of iconic as well. Obviously, because in retrospect, we know she had such a long reign. I'm just seeing who else is around in 52, what other sort of events took place. I may not even put this up for the vote because I think the Queen is too strong. The Queen is too strong. Eisenhower flew to Korea. No, it's Elizabeth. There's just no other. There's nobody even close to having that importance. It's Elizabeth. Now, in terms of the cultural one, I don't know. It's because it's she's the monarch. She is the. I know it's kind of more cultural, but she has to be down as a political figure ultimately. In terms of no really big selling records in let's have a look. 1952 in music. Sorry. Hold on. The way this site works is strange. Right, 52. There we go. Billie Holiday was around in music. Nah, I'm right on that. Now Marlon Brando was also in films this year. Gary Cooper is around. Alec Guinness is around. He was in the Lavender Hill Mob. John Ford directed The Quiet Man. I've never really been big on John Ford. He just seems like such a boring kind of American establishment type figure in my mind. No real best-selling songs that year that I can see. When did Tennessee Ernie Ford bring out his famous 16 tons stuff? So no, Tennessee Ernie Ford, 16 tons is what I got. Right, that was 56. Okay, well, he's going to have no chance for 56, but he may have had a chance for earlier, right? But no chance for 56. Not a lot. Somebody's saying that Waiting for Godot. Let's have a look. Books published in 1952. Well, we've given it to Hemingway already. You know, I did my master's dissertation on Samuel Beckett, so soft spot for him. Oh, it's a shoo-in. It's a shoo-in. There's no one else even close to the level of Samuel Beckett. It's an absolute shoo-in. I'm not even gonna put it up for the vote. It's Samuel Beckett. Not even close. Not even close. All right, so 53 then. It's just a kind of, it's not just that he's a very strong contender, it's just that it's a kind of a weakish year as well. It's a weakish year for cultural. The Time Person of the Year for 53 was Konrad Adenauer, who was re-elected as the Chancellor of West Germany, which seems a ludicrously weak pick in my mind. I mean, didn't Stalin die in 53? Or was that 54? Maybe Stalin died in 54. Eisenhower refuses a clemency appeal for the Rosenbergs. Based. Disney released Peter Pan. I really want to give Disney. I'm looking for any opportunity to give Disney his third. Marshal Tito is chosen as president of Yugoslavia. Well, I mean, Tito seems much more significant historically to me than Eisenhower. It's got to be. I mean, Tito over Eisenhower easily. Let's see who else. Stalin suffered a stroke after an all-night dinner in the Soviet Union. Stroke paralyzes the right side of his body, and he dies in March. So, I mean, Khrushchev becomes the new premier of the Soviet Union. So Khrushchev, I mean, it's got to be a commie, really, in this year. It's going to be Khrushchev or it's going to be Tito. We'll have a vote on it in a second, but it just seems absurd that Time gave it to Eisenhower. This is just ludicrous. Eurocentrism, American-centric, jingoistic nonsense from Time. Hussein was crowned the King of Jordan. I mean, King Hussein is a huge figure in the history of that area. There's so many better candidates than Eisenhower. David Ben-Gurion resigns as Prime Minister of Israel. Former correct Time Person of the Year winner, David Ben-Gurion. I love the idea of giving these awards that we're giving out, like them carrying more weight. Okay, I'm deciding by fiat that the re-election of Konrad Adenauer is just ludicrously weak, and that the choice is between Khrushchev and Tito. Now, Khrushchev made a very famous. Didn't he give that de-Stalinization speech? When was that? Was that in '53? I mean, I feel like Khrushchev becoming the new head of the Soviets is hugely significant, but I also think that Tito is a big figure in history as well. It's Tito or Khrushchev. Vote now. Vote now. I think Tito has edged it. It's Tito. All right. Let's put him in. Yeah, I agree. I mean, Khrushchev's going to have a 10-year stretch where he's got lots. I mean, there are certain people who have unfair advantages when it comes to winning this. President of the USA, Premier of the Soviet, or the leader of Russia, the leader of America, British prime ministers, and Chinese leaders are, they have really unfair structural advantages when it comes to these awards, right? Because they're the people who are most likely to make history, in this time frame that we're looking at. Whereas smaller countries or other countries, they're going to have to pick up the wins where they can. So I feel like giving it to Tito rather than Khrushchev in '53. Khrushchev's got other chances to make it, whereas Tito, you may not get another look in. Okay, in terms of there is a poll feature, Solid Snake, but we only use the poll feature when it's too close to call. Usually it's so obvious that you can just tell by looking. When it's too close to call, then I go to the poll. Okay. Now, in terms of books that came out in '53, we have Casino Royale by Ian Fleming, The Go-Between by L.P. Hartley. I had to study that at one point. Fahrenheit 451, The Long Goodbye by Raymond Chandler. Isaac Asimov's Second Foundation came out. Arthur Miller's The Crucible, another chance for Arthur Miller to make it. It's my name, and I do not have another. All right. So we also have in '53. Didn't we say The Wild One came out for Brando? I mean, I think people underestimate what a huge cultural icon Marlon Brando was. And he is especially significant for the what he represented to the older, like all of the people who were famous in the '60s and '70s, actors and musicians like Bob Dylan or Al Pacino or Robert De Niro. Like Marlon Brando was their hero, and he was the hero for that whole generation of people. He was in The Wild One in '53, so Brando is possibly on the ticket as well. Audrey Hepburn won Best Actress that year. I mean, I've got a feeling that Hepburn's never going to win because she's just around, but seems to be not favoured by chat very much. In terms of paintings that came out that year, anything that important? I mean, Francis Bacon's Two Figures, so Bacon is around, but that's not one of his more famous ones. We gave it to Rothko already. We also have Brando was also in Julius Caesar that year. So, I mean, Brando had a pretty good year in 53, but he also has another chance to win it in 54 and another chance to win it in 72. Okay. I feel like the writers are looking stronger. People just say who they think should win. Who should win? And I'm not gonna put up a poll. I'm just gonna say like who should win in 53. We've got Arthur Miller, we've got L.P. Hartley, we've got Isaac Asimov, we've got Raymond Chandler, we've got Ian Fleming, lots of writers. Then we've got Francis Bacon, who's around at this point. We've got Marlon Brando, Audrey Hepburn. Who should win? Aha, D has sent a few suggestions here. Yeah, because it struck me that in the first part of this, only Pablo Picasso as an artist won, right? D has suggested that Jackson Pollock for 52, and he's had various other suggestions as well, which we'll come back to. We've missed 52, unfortunately. Samuel Beckett got it that year. Let's have a look how people have voted. Brando, Asimov. I mean, yeah, but what did John Wayne do in 1953? I mean, I'm aware of John Wayne, obviously, but what did he do specifically in 53 for him to win? Let's have a look. He won a Henrietta Award in 53, but for what for? I mean, he was in a lot of films, but he had no particularly huge films in 53 that I can see. I mean, he'll be in contention arguably in a couple of years, I think. All right, where have people got? Brando. The thing is that Brando has a very strong 54 because he was in On the Waterfront, and he won an Oscar for it as well. And you could argue that Brando's been building Streetcar, Wild One. You know, he's building, and 54 is the year that it's like this guy is a superstar. So we could argue that Brando could be saved for next year. A lot of Asimov votes. I feel like if we're ever going to give it to Asimov, maybe this year would be the one. Let me just double check exactly when Asimov. Like, I just need to have a look what other years he could possibly win, right? Holy shit, he had a lot of books. I mean, okay, so this is like Asimov debuted in 1950. This year he had Second Foundation and Lucky Star and the Pirates of Asteroids. What would be Asimov's really big novel, though? Like, what would be the one that would, give him the Time Person of the Year? Is Second Foundation that novel? I wonder about that. It's the Foundation's trilogy. But Brando wouldn't win for Apocalypse Now. If he doesn't win in the next 2 years, his only other possible chance is 72. And by the time he'll be up against like Bowie in 72 and people like that. Climbing Everest was the biggest cultural thing. Well, who climbed Everest in 53? Okay, Edmund Hillary for climbing Everest. I feel like this is the only year that Asimov is really going to be in the conversation. I know he's a very significant sci-fi writer and all of that, but I just know what's coming up. So I'm going to say it's going to be between Edmund Hillary for climbing Everest and Asimov. We'll have the vote again. I'm going to keep on voting until we get the right answer. Yeah, Hillary or Asimov. Still, okay. This is getting into actually having a poll territory. So let's do the poll. Vote Hillary or Asimov. We're going to have to vote like this. Okay, now that it's like this, Hillary is winning in a pretty significant way now. Yeah, Asimov's not coming back from that. Okay, Edmund, Hillary. It is. And we move on. We got stuck on... See, this is the thing, is that when there's no clear winner, it gets much more difficult when it's crowded. Because then it's like, oh, well, lots of good people around, but did they do their best thing that year? So, okay, Hillary definitely won. I feel like Asimov won't get another look in now, though, but that's fine. I don't really care about that. So 1954, the actual Time Person of the Year was won by John Foster Dulles. As United States Secretary of State in 1954, Dulles was the architect of the Southeast Asia Treaty Organization, or SATO. Are we having that? It sounds a bit weak to me. I mean, let's see what else was going on. Sorry, I'm just reading about some of the things. In January 20th, 1954, the US-based National Negro Network is established with 46 member radio stations. So that is an actual network called Negro Network. You literally called. Sorry. What else went on in sorry, I can't. It's just there's something about that's tickled me. Eisenhower's still around. He authorized $400 million military aid for Vietnam, authorized by Eisenhower. Nasser becomes premier of Egypt. That seems pretty significant, I would say. He would be the leader of Egypt for best part of 20 years. Yeah, up until 1970 when he died. Now, Edward R. Murrow and Fred W. Friendly produced a 30-minute documentary called A Report on Senator Joseph McCarthy. So McCarthy was still around, but he was getting more vilified by the left-wing press at this time. Then what else was there? Eisenhower gave his domino theory speech. Kurosawa released The Seventh Samurai. Kurosawa is a really major director who's around, and he crops up for the first time on the radar. Brown versus Board of Education was passed in America. Boo, boo. What else? The first meeting of the Bilderberg group took place. Interesting. McCarthyism, like the debate over McCarthyism, is heating up around this point. I feel like the actual kind of Reds under the bed scare has kind of past its peak at this point, though. Elvis Presley released his first single in 1954, a cover of That's All Right by Sun Records. Elvis is around. The Fellowship of the Ring, the first 3 volumes of J.R.R. Tolkien's epic fantasy novel, The Lord of the Rings, is published. Now, this automatically makes me wonder, do we give it for when he completes the trilogy, or do we give it for when he starts the trilogy? Because he's finished the trilogy in 55. Return of the King comes out in 55. Fellowship comes out in 54. This means Tolkien has 2 chances to win. Not just one. He's got 54. He's in contention. 55 in contention. Godzilla came out. Hancock's Half Hour came out. The first Burger King opened. Lots of things happened in this year, in 54. And after the death of Joseph Stalin, the Soviet Union starts releasing prisoners. Now, when did Khrushchev give the so-called secret speech, or whatever it was called? Khrushchev. You know that famous speech on de-Stalinization he gave? Because I feel like that is a pretty important moment in history. Okay, so the secret speech was given in 1956, and it's currently 54. Yeah, 56 for Khrushchev. All right. The competition is really heating up now on the cultural side, because there's Tolkien in play. Elvis has entered the building, although he's not quite superstar Elvis yet. Marlon Brando has his huge year. Remember, On the Waterfront, wins the Oscar for that. On the Waterfront, an important political film as well, because basically it's a film justifying naming people on the communist list, and Elia Kazan sticking by his gun, saying that he was right to name commies, essentially. In terms of the best-selling songs of that year, we've got Bill Haley and his Comets, Rock Around the Clock, sold 25 million records in 1954. Holy shit. There's a lot of things going on. Bill Haley is around, and he sold 25 million records. Stuff in it. Then in terms of art that I can see, I mean, it's still mainly the same sort of figures around. The Disintegration of the Persistence of Memory by Dali, which was a sequel to his famous Persistence of Memory from 31. Yeah, I mean, Dali had a lot of famous paintings that year, but I feel like Dali's moment would have gone by this point. Figure with Meat by Francis Bacon. And in terms of other books out in 54, William Golding's Lord of the Flies was also out that year. Strong competition, isn't it? Very strong competition. Yeah, Elvis has to wait. Elvis's year is 56 or 57, right? He'll win one of those years, so Elvis can wait. Bill Haley and the Comets, I feel, may not be significant enough, even though they sold an awful lot of records. All right. I feel like we should hold. This is getting very gamey, but I feel like we should hold Tolkien, and Tolkien can have 55, unless there's someone else I'm overlooking. I feel like Tolkien should wait because there's just too many people around. Just seeing who else was making things. This may be slower than I was expecting because we're facing a different problem now. Is that there's too many people around. There's too many people around. There's too many people around. Rock Around the Clock is a very significant song, but it's not. I mean, we've got Elvis around the corner. He is significant, but is he like Time Person of the Year significant? Is the question. Lord of the Flies. Oh, it's difficult. Well, see, the thing is that I remember when Return of the King came out in the cinema, and they basically waited to give that all of the awards. So they didn't really give Fellowship the awards. They gave Return of the King the awards because it was the completion of the trilogy. Any other Ray Kroc for McDonald's? Well, you see, Ray Kroc would go in on the political side because business figures go in on the political side. Elvis must wait. All right. There's a lot of controversy in the chat here. Right. First of all, first order of course, do we stick or twist with John Foster Dulles as the actual winner? Do we stick or twist? Vote now. Vote now. Vote now. Yeah, I think it's a twist, isn't it? It's a twist. Then are we going to go with NASA? I think NASA's a pretty important historical figure. I feel like NASA is the most important. It's like between NASA and like McCarthy, I guess. I can't really see anyone else who's worthy of Time Person of the Year. I think it has to be NASA. I'm going to give it to General NASA. So NASA wins there. Now, this is where we've got the controversy. McDonald, like if Ray Kroc wins for McDonald's, he's going to be in the left-hand column. But McDonald's is 55, not 54. Right, I think we're going to have a vote, and it's going to be Brando, because remember we've held off on Brando since 52, right? We held off on Brando. 54 is his only chance to win until 72, in my opinion. Right, so it's going to be between Brando and Bill Haley. Brando or Haley, I say, and Tolkien will win next year. Yes, Brando. Okay, we've given it to Brando. Okay. Now there's a significant gaminess here for me because Brando should have had it, like, and we're already gonna put Tolkien in here because he has to win it, right? He has to win it. So Tolkien. Hold on a minute. Sorry. Tolkien. So, the actual Time Person of the Year for 1955 was Harlow Curtis. Harlow Curtis was president of General Motors from 1953 until 1958. In 1955, General Motors sold 5 million vehicles and became the first corporation to earn $1 billion in a single year. Are we happy with Harlow Curtis winning Time Person of the Year? Or are we going to say Ray Kroc gets it? Because didn't Ray Kroc take over McDonald's in 55? No, that happened in 61. According to Wikipedia, he purchased the company in 61. So it can't be from 55. The first McDonald's opened in 1955, and that was Ray Kroc's first. Right, so it obviously took him some time to take over the company. The first Ray Kroc owned McDonald's, the 9th McDonald's in the world, but the first one operated by Kroc, was in April 55. Okay, so the question is, does Kroc get it in 55 for his first McDonald's, or does he get it in 61 when he actually takes over the company? I feel like the 61 date is more significant. Let's just see what else happened in 1955. Okay. I mean, the actual Harlow Curtis, the first corporation to earn $1 billion, is a pretty significant achievement, considering we gave Henry Ford the 28 award. Other things that happened in 55. I'm just having a look now. This Southeast Asia Treaty Organization was established. Yeah. Baghdad Pact was signed. Rock Around the Clock by Bill Haley and the Comets was used in the movie adaptation of Ethan Hunter's Blackboard Jungle. Teenagers jumped from their seats in the cinema to dance to Rock Around the Clock. Was Bill Haley robbed? That's the question. Was Bill Haley robbed? Let's see what else. Winston Churchill resigns as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom due to ill health at the age of 80. Yay! Anthony Eden becomes Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Boo! What else? Let's have a look. The first franchise McDonald's restaurant is opened by Ray Kroc. West Germany joins NATO. A young Jim Henson introduces his earliest version of Kermit the Frog in March. God, he must have been pretty young in 55. Joe Brown and George Band are the first people to climb Mount Kanchenjunga in the Himalayas. No, we're not having another mountain climber. Walt Disney releases Lady and the Tramp. Nah, not big enough. Nah. Pancha Panchali is released by the famous Indian director Satyajit Ray. Yeah, I don't think that's big enough for Time Person of the Year. Nah. All right, first port of call then. Do we stick or twist with Harlow Curtis? Stick or twist? This is the General Motors guy. There's a lot of sticks. I feel like it may be a stick, actually, because I don't see a lot of other significant things happening that year. I feel like we're going to stick with Harlow Curtis. If we gave it to Henry Ford, we should give it to Curtis. I mean, who else would win it? I don't see any other massive events in 1955. I'm not giving it to Anthony Eden. Fuck that. Nothing else happened. 55 was like a nothing year, really. Nah, he's gonna. I'm gonna stick with him. The only other candidate is Ray Kroc, but I feel like 61 may be Ray Kroc's time. Let's have a vote. Let's have a vote, right? What do you mean? What have I missed? What have I missed? Narco Republican. Ho Chi Minh. Why would I give it to Ho Chi Minh? What did he do? Let's have a look. Ho Chi. Vietnam was already going, wasn't it? By this point. Free movement ended. Okay. The official start date of the Vietnam War. The North is allied to the Viet Cong. All right, okay. Ho Chi Minh. Let's have a vote. Let's have a vote. Let's have a vote. Ho Chi Minh or this Harlow, right? Ho Chi Minh. Yeah, we'll have a vote on this, I feel, because I do agree that if Ho Chi Minh is going to win it anywhere, it's going to be here. Got to take your chances, right? Ho Chi Minh. So let's have a vote. Let's have a vote. I think Ho Chi Minh is a good choice. All right, he's won the vote in a landslide. So Ho Chi Minh. Okay. Okay. 56 then, and the actual winner of Time Person of the Year was the Hungarian freedom fighter, representing Hungarian revolutionaries involved in the 1956 uprising against the Soviet-dominated government, which was put down by the Soviet army. So the Hungarian freedom fighter is not going to be ours. We do not accept that. Okay. Egyptian leader Nasser vows to reconquer Palestine. Well, Nasser has already been given the award by us, so it's not going to be him. Elvis Presley enters the United States music charts for the first time with Heartbreak Hotel. Norma Jean Mortensen legally changes her name to Marilyn Monroe. Nikita Khrushchev attacks the veneration of Joseph Stalin in a speech called On the Cult of Personality and Its Consequences, also known as the Secret Speech. I feel like if Khrushchev is going to win at any time, it's going to be in this year. Laurence Olivier adapted Richard III for TV. Elvis Presley released his first gold album entitled Elvis Presley in the United States. It's going to be difficult to look past Elvis for 56, I feel, but we'll see who else is around. I will have a look at these art suggestions again to see who else is there. 58, he's got Jasper Johns and Robert Rauschenberg. Okay. The Montgomery bus boycott took place. Nasser becomes the second president of Egypt. Marilyn Monroe married Arthur Miller, the playwright. NASA nationalizes the Suez Canal, sparking international condemnation. I think NASA may be the Time Man of the Year here as well. Cecil B. DeMille's epic 10 Commandments, starring Charlton Heston as Moses, was released, becoming the highest-grossing film of all time, or in the top 10 for the highest-grossing films of all time. Cecil B. DeMille is a pretty important character. He's not going to beat Elvis, though. Spoilers, everyone. I feel like instigating the Suez Crisis is strong and possibly stronger than the secret speech of Khrushchev. It's going to have to be Nasser again, isn't it? Have we prematurely given it to Nasser in 54? Do we need to rejig 54 because Nasser surely can't win it twice? He's not that important. He was important, but not that important. But if we do that, who would win in 54 then? We could give it to Khrushchev in 54 just for becoming Soviet premier. Give it to McCarthy. Lady of Shalott is adamant it should be Khrushchev. Khrushchev for 54. Okay, right. We're going to have 2 votes. Khrushchev is going to be in both votes, okay? So this is for 54. It's going to be Khrushchev. Oh, hold on. It's going to be Khrushchev versus Joe McCarthy for 54. So it's going to be Khrushchev versus McCarthy for 1954. And then immediately afterwards, we're going to do Khrushchev versus Nasser for 56. I feel like Nasser starting the Suez Canal, Suez Crisis. Okay, Khrushchev has won for 54. Khrushchev has won for 54. Okay. So we've given Khrushchev 54. This is democracy, everybody. All right, so Khrushchev gets 54. I'll put him there. And now we've got... It's between Nasser and Khrushchev for 56, I feel. Pretty strongly that. Okay. I mean, simply becoming the premier and replacing Stalin is huge, I would say. So then we've got Nasser, and then we've got Khrushchev again for 56 now. 1956. I thought this would go a lot quicker. It's actually, we've got like massively bogged down in the 50s. Okay, Nasser is pretty handily winning this, right? Nasser is pretty handily winning this now. Okay, so it's clear. Nasser wins in 56 for Suez. Fair. Now, in terms of the cultural figure, I think Elvis is pretty unfuckable. Nobody would ever say that Elvis was unfuckable, friends. Elvis is pretty like difficult to overlook, I feel, for 56. But other things were going on. In terms of books that came out in 56, books published in 1956, we have not a lot, really. Not a lot. Allen Ginsberg, Howl, and other poems. Eugene O'Neill's Long Day's Journey into Night. They're not top contenders in my view. We've got films. Ingrid Bergman in Anastasia. Poor old Katharine Hepburn. She's never going to win this. James Dean had a big year in 56. Laurence Olivier was around. It's Elvis, isn't it? The Grammys started. The Grammys had started. No, they hadn't started quite yet. Harry Belafonte had a top-selling album called Calypso in that year. But it's not. It's Elvis. Let's just stop messing around. It's Elvis. It's Elvis. It's just there's just no other. Yeah, I know. Yeah, John Osborne's "Don't Look Back in Anger." That's true, Lady of Shalott. But really, Elvis Presley versus John Osborne. I mean, we could give John Osborne it in 56 and then Elvis in 57. Could do it like that, but it's Elvis. Come on. I mean, no, it's just there's no other. It has to be Elvis Presley in 56. No other comparison, surely. Why has it gone off the bottom of the page here? What's happened to it? Oh, because of that. Okay. All right. 57 then. There are some people who are just too big, right? And I mean, John Osborne is. I mean, I love him and everything, but come on. 57. The actual winner of Time Person of the Year was Nikita Khrushchev. It says here, in 1957, Khrushchev consolidated his leadership of the Soviet Union, surviving a plot to dismiss him by Stalinist members within the Presidium, leading the Soviet Union into the space race with the launch of Sputnik 1. So, other things happened in 1957, okay? Harold Macmillan becomes Prime Minister of the UK. You've never had it so good. Eisenhower's still a fucking round. Eisenhower's been around forever. Privately sworn in for a second term as president. Never goes away, Eisenhower. Kurosawa released Throne of Blood. Right? Kurosawa, we overlooked him for Seventh Samurai. Throne of Blood, it's if Kurosawa's going to win. But, get this, also released in 1957, Ingmar Bergman's The Seventh Seal. Very, very big movie. So maybe we could have an art house showdown. Kenyan leader Dedan Kimathi is executed by the British colonial government. UNU becomes president of Burma. The Eurovision Song Contest is held for the first time. Egypt reopens the Suez Canal. Sukarno declares martial law in Indonesia. Lots of things happening this year. The Communist Party of India wins elections in Kerala. The United Kingdom announces that Singapore will gain self-rule in 1958. Lots and lots going on. Real Madrid won the European Cup. I feel like it's between Khrushchev and Macmillan, really. I feel like Khrushchev might just win again, but as far as I can tell, I mean, we can put Eisenhower in, but did Eisenhower do anything in that other one? Let's do another poll. Let's do Macmillan versus Khrushchev yet again, and I'm going to ask people to vote. I mean, Stalin did win 3 times, so Khrushchev winning twice would be quite a... I feel like the Russian leader and the American president have really significant advantages. Why are you boycotting, Stuart? For Sputnik. Right. Khrushchev has massively won. The chat is just massive Khrushchev fanboys, I've realized. Everybody just loves Khrushchev. Now, in terms of what else was going on in 57, we've got Kurosawa releasing Throne of Blood. Jack Kerouac published On the Road. Big book, right? We've got Edward Hopper was around in the world of art. Western Motel. It's not his famous one, though. It's not the one I had on my office wall for all those years. But yeah, I like Edward Hopper a good bit. Also, we've got Alec Guinness won Best Actor for Bridge on the River Kwai. David Lean won Best Director for Bridge on the River Kwai. David Lean, this is probably his last possible year of winning, but he's already won it twice, so, you know, he's already won it twice. I think it's a straight-up fight between Kurosawa and Bergman. It's Kurosawa or Bergman, because these are really important directors, and they're not going to win again. You know, unless we moved Elvis into 57, but Elvis is 56. His big year was 50. His breakthrough year was 56. Do we include Lean on the poll again? I'll include Lean on the poll again to give him a chance of winning a third time. Vote! Yeah, but I mean, Khrushchev won for Sputnik. All the people spurging on about space. Khrushchev won partly for Sputnik, and for the secret speech, and for desalinization. Okay, Lean is coming a distant third. He's coming a distant third, so it is between Kurosawa and Bergman. I think it's Bergman. It's Bergman. Yeah, secret speech was 56, but the actual deStalinization and the consolidation of power and the defeat of the Stalinists happened in 57, and Sputnik launched in 57. Okay, Bergman wins. Bergman wins. Okay, Ingmar Bergman. Fair winner. A fair winner. Okay. D has suggested for 58 that Jasper Johns would be there, so we'll try to keep that in mind. The actual winner of Time Person of the Year in 1958 was Charles de Gaulle. He was appointed Prime Minister of France in May 1958, following the collapse of the Fourth Republic, and established the Fifth Republic, and was elected as President of France. Now, I've got a funny feeling this is going to be a stick, because Charles de Gaulle is a major character in history. I'll just see what else happened. Edmund Hillary completed his third overland journey of the South Pole. Sputnik falls to Earth from its orbit and burns up. Egypt and Syria unite to form the United Arab Republic. The Manchester United 7 footballers are killed, but Busby's Babes, they were killed in the Munich air disaster. Bertrand Russell launches a campaign for nuclear disarmament. In Cuba, Fidel Castro's Radio Rebelde begins broadcasting. So Castro is around. Khrushchev formally becomes premier of the Soviet Union. He's just been like the, chairman of the inner bureau, or whatever the fuck they call it. Stalin was never that officially the premier. He was always the secretary of the Communist Party, or whatever it was. Soviet Union launches Sputnik 3. Dwight D. Eisenhower becomes the first American elected official to appear on color television. Real Madrid won the European Cup again. Charles de Gaulle is brought out of retirement to lead France by decree for 6 months. Paste. Elizabeth I announces that she is giving her son, an heir apparent, Prince Charles, the customary title of Prince of Wales. Okay. The First Cod War begins between the United Kingdom and Iceland. The Cod Wars starts. The Cod Wars, friends. We had the Emu Wars last time. Now we've got the Cod War. Pope John the 23rd succeeds Pope Pius XII as the 261st Pope. Gaullists win the French. It's Charles de Gaulle, isn't it? Let's face it. Does anybody object? Stay stick or twist. Does anybody object to Charles de Gaulle? It's de Gaulle. Let's face it. It's de Gaulle. De Gaulle wins. Yeah, de Gaulle wins. Okay. I should also mention that Khrushchev was the official winner in 1957 as well. Okay. We did have a long break for the people who have arrived from earlier on. We did have a 3-4 hour break between this stream and the last stream. Also in 1958, in terms of records, don't see any. The Grammys don't start for another year, so we can't start with them yet. My Fair Lady had the top selling album, which is the soundtrack of My Fair Lady. David Niven won Best Actor. Not a particularly great film year from what I can tell. Feel like it shouldn't be a film this year. In terms of books, Agatha Christie's been moseying around all this time. Truman Capote wrote Breakfast at Tiffany's in 1958. Truman Capote is the sort of fellow who might. Dr. Zeus, the Cat in the Hat comes back. A Bear Called Paddington was written by Michael Bond. Classic Adventures of the Bear from Darkest Peru. Paddington Bear. it's weird because these aren't particularly strong, are they? In the overall scheme of things, in my view. Rothko is still kind of the main artist around. We've already given it to him. So, who do we give it to? Alfred Hitchcock released Vertigo. Was that in 58? Was Hitchcock in 58? Let's have a look. Alfred Hitchcock. We haven't really thought about him yet, have we? They're gonna be people complaining that the film is that the list is too film centric if we keep on giving it to directors. But Rear Window is 54. Vertigo 58. North by Northwest 59. I mean, if Hitchcock is going to win it, it's going to have to be in these next 2 years, I feel. 1960 was Psycho. Right, so it's in the next 3 years, a Hitchcock territory. I mean, Dr. Zeus, Cat in the Hat, is that... I feel like that was bigger in America than it was here. It's more of a kind of a big American thing. Cat in the Hat came out in 57. The Cat in the Hat comes back was 58. Ian Fleming wrote Dr. No. Truman Capote. All right, I'm gonna put it to a vote again. I feel like we've got a number. I'm gonna say vote. We've got Truman Capote. We've got Dr. Zeus. We've got Alfred Hitchcock, who does have a couple more chances to win. Alfred Hitchcock. We've got who else did we say? Who else did we say? Ian Fleming. Ian Fleming for James Bond for Dr. No. Okay. Let's put it up for the vote. Let's have a look. Let's have a look how this vote is going. It's kind of split, but Hitchcock is... Ian Fleming is winning. Hitchcock is winning. Ian Fleming is winning. Truman Capote is coming a distant 4th place, so he is not going to win Time Person of the Year, friends. Okay, keep on voting. Keep on voting. Every little vote counts. I think Fleming has won. Yeah, Fleming is polled out in front. Fleming is the winner. Ian Fleming wins. So our Time Person of the Year for 1958 is Ian Fleming. All right, so it's 1959, and the actual Time Person of the Year, right? The actual... What do we... Okay, people are now demanding a runoff. Okay, let's do a runoff then. So it's... vote again. Runoff. Hitchcock. How exciting. Hitchcock versus Fleming. Can the chat overturn the result? Or is it going to be Ian Fleming? Vote again. It's not rigged, Frederick. I'm just running votes. It's not rigged. Oh, it's 50-50. Oh my God, 52-48. 52-48. 51, 50-50. Oh, it's so exciting. It's literally a dead rubber. Oh my God, it's a dead rubber. It really is a dead rubber. It's 50-50. I can't stop it. This is properly like 2020 election time, friends. 2020 election time. Keep on voting. Vote. Oh my God. Vote. It's finished. It's just 50-50. I've ended the poll. Hitchcock has won somehow. In the final vote, it says Hitchcock 50, Fleming 49. How is that even possible? How is that even possible? Okay, it's Alfred Hitchcock. Okay, Alfred Hitchcock. There may have to be an asterisk over that one. Alfred Hitchcock. We may actually overturn that if Hitchcock wins again, because he's got other chances to win coming up. So the 59... 59... Sorry, it's very funny. No, so 1959, the Time Person of the Year, yet again, was Dwight D. Eisenhower, who never seems to go away. This dude is just go away, Dwight. It says Eisenhower was president of the United States from 1953 to 1961. In 1959, Eisenhower arranged the state visit by Nikita Khrushchev to the United States and toured several countries, becoming the first US president to visit India. I don't like the idea of just giving it to Dwight because he was the president. But let's see what else was going on. Okay, January the 1st in Cuba. Batista flees Havana when the forces of Fidel Castro advance. In Cuba, rebel troops, led by Che Guevara, enter the city of Havana. I mean, already, that is hugely more significant than fucking Eisenhower going to India. It's Castro by a mile. Castro by a mile already. But let's see what else happened. Knox mine disaster. The European Court of Human Rights is established. Boo, boo. A plane transporting the musicians Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and the Big Bopper goes down in foggy conditions. The tragedy is later termed The Day the Music Died, and that was popularized by Don McLean's 1971 song American Pie. Fidel Castro becomes the premier of Cuba. I mean, is there any point? Nobody's going to beat Castro for this year. It's Castro. It's Fidel Castro, isn't it? I'm not even going to hold the vote. It's Fidel Castro already. Nothing is topping the Cuban Revolution in 59. In terms of what else goes on, the art movies and 59. Let's have a look. Okay, so this is the first year that the Grammys started, right? And the winner of the Grammy Award that year was Henry Mancini for the music from Peter Gunn. But Frank Sinatra had 2 albums nominated, including Frank Sinatra Sings for Only the Lonely and Come Fly With Me. I'll also note that Frank Sinatra won the following year for Come Dance With Me. And I feel like if Sinatra is ever going to win, now would be around about now would be the time. Would you guys agree? So I feel like Sinatra should be in the mix. Ben-Hur, William Wyler won Best Director for Ben-Hur. Charlton Heston won Best Actor for Ben-Hur. So I would say Charlton Heston, if he's ever going to win, would be this year. Just seeing what books came out in 59. 59 in books was... Don't see anything obvious. Robert Bloch's Psycho, Starship Troopers by Robert Heinlein, Goldfinger by Ian Fleming. Hitchcock is still in the mix. So, okay, so North by Northwest by Hitchcock. Some Like It Hot came out in 59. So that basically means Marilyn Monroe. Okay. Right. Marilyn Monroe is definitely in the mix in 59. And Some Like It Hot was Moon. We're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna have a runoff. We're gonna have 4 and then the final 2. Okay. Monroe. Hold on. Marilyn Monroe. We're gonna have Charlton Heston. We're gonna have, who else did we say? Ian Fleming for Goldfinger. And we're gonna have we're not going to put Hitchcock in this year because he's got Psycho coming up. But we also have, who did we say? Heinlein? Robert Heinlein? Or did we say... There's someone else, wasn't there? Who else did we say? Frank Sinatra. It was Frank Sinatra. Because Sinatra, if he's going to win, has to be in the next 2 years. Right, Monroe. It's a strong lineup. Monroe, Heston, Fleming, Sinatra. Vote! Highland's not important enough. All right, so Monroe is handily winning. The 3 men are splitting the vote. Monroe has got 40% of the vote with 100 votes gone. Sinatra in the rear, followed by Fleming and Heston. It's going to be a straight runoff between Monroe and Sinatra. So it's going to be Monroe versus Sinatra. Fleming is getting pissed on, basically. So, Vutada. Marilyn Monroe versus Frank Sinatra. Straight runoff. Monroe or Sinatra. You can say what you want about Marilyn Monroe, but she did it her way. Oh no. Like Sinatra is now beating Monroe because the forces of misogyny have assembled. So even though she handily won, this is like one of those French elections where Monroe is like Marine Le Pen, and all of the shit lib voters have come together to vote for Sinatra. It's like Marilyn Monroe is Geert Wilders or something. Misogyny. Misogyny. The chat have basically gamed the vote here. Bitter Ian Fleming voters have got behind Sinatra. Oh no. Democracy is ruining my correct Time Person of the Year. Monroe has been absolutely diddled there. Absolutely screwed over. As she was in life, of course. So Frank Sinatra wins. I feel like that was somewhat unfair, but there we go. That was so unfair. All right, but Monroe wasn't quite out yet, was she? So Marilyn Monroe's got a couple of years left. Marilyn Monroe. When did she actually? She died in 1962. What else did she do though? I mean, Some Like It Hot was her big movie. She still got Let's Make Love, The Misfits, and Something's Gotta Give, which was her last appearance. All right, so the actual Time Person of the Year in 1960 was so lame. I hate Time. US scientists. Time claimed in 1960 that science is at the apogee of its power for good or evil, although it noted that the 15 men on the cover include 2 or 3 whose greatest work is probably behind them. The cover of the piece spotlights the following scientists, and then a bunch of scientists, basically. All right, so they gave it to American scientists, which is such a pathetic and gay cop-out, really. I hate Time. Hate them. Okay, so here are some of the things that happened in 1960. Eisenhower, who has been hanging around since the mid-40s, he's visiting Japan. Massive protests in Japan over the new treaty that Eisenhower proposes, the US-Japan Security Treaty. Harold Macmillan makes his famous Winds of Change speech in one of the greatest acts of betrayal of all time by a British Prime Minister. Absolute scumbag, as all British Prime Ministers have always been. The Winds of Change, what a twat. What else have we got? There's a lot of stuff about Macmillan doing. Macmillan's basically going around the world giving change of wind speeches in every different country. Basically we're gonna forcibly break up the empire. Anyone left clinging on, you're not going to be part of the British Empire anymore. Okay. Che Guevara had his iconic picture taken, the absolutely iconic picture of Che Guevara that everybody knows and loves, was taken in this year. And it was taken because he was hanging around in Havana, basically, having completed the Cuban Revolution. He was just enjoying a few cigars and had that famous picture taken. So whether we give it to Che Guevara just for that picture, I don't know. Khrushchev demands an apology for Eisenhower for the U-2 reconnaissance plane fights over the Soviet Union. New government in Turkey formed by Kemal Gürsel. Premiere of Alfred Hitchcock's landmark thriller film Psycho happens in the United States. This is a chance for the Hitch to win again this year. If he does so, we may consider reinstating Fleming, or inserting Monroe into 57. Even though it's a bit early for her. What else? The newly named Beatles began a 48-night residency at the Indra Club in Hamburg. That is a very young Beatles performing in Germany. So the Beatles are around officially now. They're about to take the Time Person of the Year by storm, I'm sure, in the next decade. John F. Kennedy, the presidential candidate, suggests the idea for the Peace Corps of the United States. John F. Kennedy is elected president becoming the second youngest man ever to be elected. So JFK is president. I would say that JFK is a strong candidate. I think it's between JFK and Che Guevara. So let's go between Che or JFK. I think it's between those two. Vote. Oh, we don't forget, we can't give it to JFK after he's killed. So he's going to have to win it at some point, isn't he? I mean, the Cuban Missile Crisis is coming up. So the thing is that it's very... remember, we gave it to FDR in 1932, right? We gave it to Truman in whenever it was. We gave it to Truman in 1945, right? So it's not unprecedented for us to just give it to the guy who wins the election, because it's like a recognition. Oh, this guy is the president now. This guy is the president. JFK has hammered Che, right? It's John F. Kennedy wins Time Person of the Year for 1960. Cultural, right? We've got Hitchcock. We've got Marilyn Monroe. What books were written in 1960? Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird. I don't like that novel. So I'm not going to put him in there. Her in there, I mean. Poor old Agatha Christie is just always pumping out about 10 novels a year. Ian Fleming wrote For Your Eyes Only. Right. It's between Marilyn Monroe. All right, let's just see what other films were around. Billy Wilder won Best Director for The Apartment, defeating Hitchcock. Burt Lancaster won Best Actor. John Osborne wrote The Entertainer in 1960. Elizabeth Taylor won Best Actress for Butterfield 8. Frank Sinatra won the Grammy for Best Album that year, but we've already given it to Sinatra, which was a steal if you ask me. Elvis Presley had a single out in 1960 called It's Now or Never, which sold 20 million records. So Elvis still selling shitloads of records in 1960, but he's already won it. But then again, Alfred Hitchcock has already won it. And Ian Fleming hasn't won it. And who else did we have in there? Marilyn Monroe. So it's going to be another four-way. It's going to be another fatal four-way. Fatal four-way. And we're going to have Alfred Hitchcock. We're going to have Elvis Presley. We're going to have Marilyn Monroe. And we're going to have, who was the first? Oh, Ian Fleming. Poor old Ian Fleming. Like, just stick him in every year. Okay. Fatal four-way. Marilyn Monroe was a very happily married woman to Arthur Miller. I'm sure she was not ever in a four-way. Monroe is winning. Fleming second. Presley and Hitchcock are out. It's come down to this. It's the showdown that everybody's been waiting for. Ian Fleming versus Marilyn Monroe. It's Monroe versus Fleming. Vote Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe versus Ian Fleming. Justice will be served. Let's see who wins this. Okay. I can't stop. I just know that the vote is being fortified by absolute misogyny every time. Oh my God. Okay, Ian Fleming has finally won. He's finally won. Okay. The anti-woman vote fortified. Ian Fleming finally wins, which is kind of fitting that it's in the 60s because Job Bond is more 60s and 50s, I guess. So it's like it's 1960, it's JFK, it's Bond. The 60s have arrived. I quite like that. I quite like that. Okay. So in 1961, the actual Time Person of the Year was John F. Kennedy. Who else? What else happened in 1961? So the United States severed diplomatic relations with Cuba. Dwight Eisenhower announced that. Kennedy was inaugurated. Kennedy becomes the president. The Portuguese colonial war begins with Angola. Kennedy warns the USSR to avoid interfering in the United Nations pacification of the Congo. Hassan II becomes the king of Morocco. What else happens? The Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin becomes the first human in space, orbiting the Earth once before parachuting to the ground. Yuri Gagarin, pretty important. A coup attempt fails against Salazar in Portugal. The Bay of Pigs invasion of Cuba begins. Fidel Castro announces that the Bay of Pigs invasion has been defeated. There's a putsch in the Algiers. 4 generals who oppose de Gaulle's policies fail in the coup attempt. 61 is the year of failed coups. Judy Garland performs a legendary comeback at the Carnegie Hall in New York City. Tottenham Hotspur become the first team to win the English League and Cup double. And as of 2023, this is the last time that Tottenham Hotspur won the Football League. So there we go. The civil rights movement is underway at this time. Boo. So there's lots of civil rights stuff going on. There's a summit where Khrushchev and Kennedy meet in Vienna, called the Vienna Summit. So yeah, stuff going on. The first Six Flags Over Texas theme park officially opens to the public. Tito becomes the second human to orbit the Earth. I think Yuri Gagarin's a pretty important character, and I feel like he might be the one. The film Breakfast at Tiffany's is released with an absolutely iconic performance by Audrey Hepburn. West Side Story is released in the United States. Private Eye is launched in the United Kingdom. Stalin's body is removed from the mausoleum, the Lenin Mausoleum. Joseph Heller publishes Catch-22. Kennedy sends 18,000 military advisors to South Vietnam. 18,000 advisors? That's a lot of advice. Walt Disney's first live-action Technicolor musical, Babes in Toyland, is released but flops. That's about it. All right, so I want to say that Yuri Gagarin probably should be the Time Person of the Year. Who else is even up for it on the politics side? Adolf Eichmann begins his trial in Jerusalem. That also happened. I feel like Gagarin versus JFK would be the... I think it's JFK versus Gagarin. So let's do that one first. JFK, a vote. Start. It's taken us 2 hours to get through the 1950s. We may have to stop soon. When did Marilyn sing to... Okay, Gagarin has absolutely smashed that, so I'm just going to stop the poll early. There's just no point. Gagarin. Gagarin wins, so he goes there. Now, that is a good question. When did Marilyn Monroe sing to JFK? Okay, so she did that. Didn't she do that famous thing where she came out of the cake or something? She sang "Happy Birthday, Mr. President" at Madison Square Garden. When did she do that, though? In 1962, that happened. So Monroe died in 62, and she released Something's Gotta Give in 62, and she died in 62. Okay, so 62 is yet another chance for Marilyn Monroe to win. Okay, so just before she died, absolute last chance saloon for Marilyn Monroe is 62. But in 61, Catch 22 by Heller was published. James and the Giant Peach by Roald Dahl was published. I'll just see what albums were out that year. In 62, it's still a lot of jazz, which we're not going to be, I will not be. No. Bob Dylan's got to be on the horizon though. When does Dylan? Dylan's got to be lurking somewhere, I would say. In terms of films, West Side Story, as we heard about, and the film Judgment at Nuremberg was released, which I don't care about, and Audrey Hepburn was in Breakfast at Tiffany's. And in the world of art, Robert Rauschenberg is probably the most famous person around at this time. But and Roy Lichtenstein is now doing his pop arts, and Jasper Johns is around. So the pop art guys are about. But who have we got? Well, if we're holding Monroe for 62, Fleming won in 60. He's not going to get a look in again. I think it's Joseph Heller. I mean, do we really care about Catch 22? Is it that important? Wait! Stop! Ray Kroc. Wait! Stop! Ray Kroc. We need to vote again. Vote again. McDonald's. Wait! Stop! Vote. Ray Kroc has to go up against Gagarin, I'm afraid. Yeah, you were the first man in space, but did you launch McDonald's? We're voting again. Ray or Gagarin? Ray, Kroc, or Gagarin? Oh, look at you. You voted for Gagarin again. Ray Kroc was robbed. He was robbed, I'm telling you. Oh, look at this. Robbed. This chat is just, they've got all their priorities wrong. I mean, could we insert Ray Kroc as a cultural character? Or are we going to say Audrey Hepburn? Audrey Hepburn as a kind of icon. It's kind of a weakish year, to be honest, for culture. West Side Story's wank. I mean, it's not like, you know, all of this stuff is wank. Any other suggestions? Who should win for 61? Yeah, but we're basically changing the rules. We're changing the rules just to get Ray Kroc in. That's not cool, is it? Putting Ray Kroc in would, if we put Ray Kroc in cultural, we'd have to put Henry Ford in. You understand? Ray Kroc is a business tycoon. Tycoons have to go in the left column. Those are the rules. We cannot broke them. We cannot. I will not have the correct Time Person of the Year besmirched in this way. Unless we say that astronauts are cultural characters. Let's do that. Let's just switch it round. We're going to switch it round. From now on, astronauts are cultural icons. We're going to do it this way. We're going to do it that way. Okay. Yeah, that works. That works. Okay. Not happy. No. People are very upset with this. Yuri is science and therefore belongs in the left-hand column. All right, well, let's do a vote on this then, okay? Audrey Hepburn versus Ray Kroc. And if Ray Kroc wins, he stays in the left column. He stays in the left column. But if Audrey Hepburn wins, Gagarin shifts to the left column, okay? How about that? Vote. We're going to do this. It's not about whether you morally approve of McDonald's or not. It's about, is this objectively something that changed the world? McDonald's is in every country. It's in like 100 nations. You can't go to any town without seeing the giant arches. You fuckwits. You absolute fuckwits. You tosspots. Oh my God. It's not true because Russia did have a McDonald's when Ukraine was at war with them. Right, I'm ending the poll. It's 50-50. Oh, so what do we do? It was a tie. On what planet? Okay, right. On what planet is Audrey Hepburn more important than McDonald's? Right, let's carry on then. It was a tie. That means the incumbent, who was Ray Kroc, wins. So we're gonna go with this very dodgy ruling where we're deciding that Yuri Gagarin is a cultural character for basically no reason. Okay, so 1962, and the Time Person of the Year was Pope John the 13th. The Pope of the Roman Catholic Church from 1958 to 1963. In 1962, he volunteered to act as a mediator in the Cuban Missile Crisis between the USA and the USSR, gaining praise from both sides. He initiated the Second Vatican Council that same year. Now, even if you really hate Vatican II, even if you hate Vatican II, that's pretty significant, isn't it? What else happened in 62? Well, the Cuban Missile Crisis, which means automatically JFK and Fidel Castro are in the mix, I would say. Stan Lee created Hulk and the Incredible Hulk 1 for Marvel Comics. Now, bear in mind that Bob Kane did not win for Batman, which I'm still butthurt about, by the way, but that's another story. Nehru wins as Prime Minister of India for the 4th time. He's still hanging around. Juan Carlos of Spain marries the Greek princess Sophia of Athens. 1962 World Cup begins in Chile. Stan Lee created Spider-Man for Marvel Comics in 1962. I'm not allowing Stan Lee to be on the ballot if Bob Kane is not allowed also on the ballot. Andy Warhol premieres his Campbell soup can in 1962. The Rolling Stones debut at the Long John Baldry Club in what the press dubs the Night of the Long Knives. Prime Minister Harold Macmillan dismisses a third of his cabinet. The Mariner 1 spacecraft flies erratically several minutes after its launch and it has to be destroyed. So the Mariner 1 was a disaster. What else? Marilyn Monroe died. Nelson Mandela is arrested in South Africa. Lots of things happening in 62. JFK gave a speech at Rice University, reaffirms that the United States will put a man on the moon. Bob Dylan premieres his song, A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, at Carnegie Hall in New York City. These are some pretty heavyweight characters now. The Beatles' first single, Love Me Do, is released. Now, I feel like the Beatles and Bob Dylan have to wait. We're going to call this the Brando rule, right? On the Brando rule, they have to wait. So I'm not putting Dylan or the Beatles on the ballot yet. Let's have a look. Solzhenitsyn publishes the novel One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich. I feel that Solzhenitsyn can wait. He can wait for Gulag Archipelago. Or what else? There's so much going on this year. It's very exciting. David Lean releases the epic film Lawrence of Arabia, starring Peter O'Toole and Omar Sharif, Alec Guinness, and various others. Okay. So the first port of call is, and we'll just do, and Dr. No, starring Sean Connery as James Bond, was released as well. So, Warhol is a good pick, right? For 62 as well, but Marilyn Marilyn. I think I'm just going to Lawrence of Arabia. Lawrence of Arabia. David Lean did win Best Director that year. Gregory Peck won Best Actor for Killing a Mockingbird. Anne Bancroft won for The Miracle Worker. God, 62 was a banner year. A lot of shit was going on in 62. A lot of things going on in 62, friends. Lots of things. So, the first question is, are we happy with the Pope as Time's choice? Do we stick or twist? Just write in the chat, stick or twist. All right, I think we're sticking. We're going to stick with John the 23rd. John the 23rd, we're going to stick with. He goes in, and we have to bold him. And why John Wayne? Why John Wayne for 62, Frederick? Why John Wayne for 62? Why John Wayne for 62? Make the case. Books that came out in 62 include, well, we already mentioned the main one, Solzhenitsyn. Ken Kesey's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest came out. Nabokov's Pale Fire. Philip K. Dick, The Man in High Castle. They were the big novels of the year. Ian Fleming for The Spy Who Loved Me as well. Yeah, bold means that it's already the same. Okay. And the winner of the cultural one is Marilyn Monroe. It has to be. We have to give it to her then. Warhol will have other chances. Beatles will have other chances. Dylan will have other chances. All of these other characters will have other chances. Marilyn will not have another chance. So, let us carry on. I mean, really, Fleming and Monroe should be swapped, but, you know, anyway. I mean, you know, singing to JFK, you know, the film was shared out that year, Monroe. She should have won in 59. She was absolutely robbed. And in fact, we could probably do jiggery pokery where, you know, we could probably swap around some of these names, but it doesn't really matter. Let's face it. So let us carry on. I have fiated Marilyn Monroe in 1963. The actual winner of the Time Person of the Year was Martin Luther King for his "I Have a Dream" speech. Martin Luther King. Now that has become subsequently very famous. Of course, civil rights was in full swing in 63. What are some of the other things that happened that year? There was a big lunar eclipse and a big solar eclipse that happened that year. Charles de Gaulle vetoed the United Kingdom's entry into the European Common Market based. Still Cuban Missile stuff coming on. Harold Wilson becomes leader of the opposition Labour Party, becomes Prime Minister the following year. Martin Luther King issues his letter from Birmingham jail. WF champion. That's our first wrestler mentioned ever. The Coca-Cola company introduces its first diet drink called Tab Cola. There's a smallpox outbreak in Stockholm. AC Milan won the European Cup. Fidel Castro visited the Soviet Union. JFK passed the Equal Pay Act. JFK gave a speech called A Strategy of Peace. Pope Paul VI succeeds Paul the 23rd as the next pope. David Ben-Gurion is replaced by Levi Eshkol as Prime Minister of Israel. Kennedy gives his famous Ich bin ein Berliner speech. This is a pretty active year for Kennedy, right? He's doing a lot of stuff. The great train robbery took place in England. Martin Luther King gives the I Have a Dream speech. What else? The Sicilian mafia boss Bernardo Provenzano was indicted for murder and was captured 43 years later on April the 11th, 2006. Bloody hell! He was wanted for 43 years before they got him. Malaysia is formed by merging the Federation of Malaysia, the British Crown colony of Singapore, and Sarawak. Rioters in Jakarta protest the formation of Malaysia. Second Vatican Council in Rome opens. JFK toasts Haile Selassie, who's still around, don't forget, at a luncheon in Maryland. There is a coup in Honduras, and President Morales becomes the leader. 2 decades of... President Morales is deposed, and General Oswaldo Orellano takes his place. So that's important. The star-studded movie It's a Mad, Mad, Mad World, famous for the front cover of Unpopular Opinions a few weeks ago, premieres. Alec Douglas Hume succeeds Macmillan as Prime Minister. JFK is assassinated in Texas in 1963. Lee Harvey Oswald, what done it, apparently. Lyndon B. Johnson becomes president. So the real question is, do we stick with MLK or do we give it to JFK, who's the only other person, I think, even in the running? Do we stick or and I'm going to give it the vote. It's going to be MLK or JFK. And I'm going to ask people to vote. This would make JFK a 2-time winner, but other people have won it twice. Like Khrushchev won it twice, for example. We're going to see, is it MLK or JFK? JFK is thrashing MLK. You can give it to dead people because we gave it to Monroe, who died the previous... If they died within the year, but still did significant things in that year, like Monroe did, you can do it. And I think JFK has handily won this. So John F. Kennedy wins for the second time. Now, on the cultural front, what was going on? In terms of albums, it's still not like Tony Bennett and people like this are still like dominating the charts. Best-selling record of that year, though, was I Wanna Hold Your Hand by the Beatles. That sold 12 million singles in 1963. So the Beatles are around in 63. When did Bob Dylan play on Capitol Hill? When was Bob Dylan? When did he do that? Freewheeling Bob Dylan and the... When did Bob Dylan play on Capitol Hill? That's the question. I'm going to just type that in. Because I reckon if Dylan's going to win at all, it will be that will be one of the times that he could win. Dylan sings Capital. That actually happened in... When did that happen? I'm pretty sure that was 63 as well. Let me just double check. Yeah, Freewheeling Bob Dylan came out in 63, and Dylan played on Capitol Hill in 63 as well. The March on Washington happened in 63, right? So Dylan, I reckon, is a very strong 63 contender. Is this the first Dylan versus Beatles showdown? Is a question. In film that year, Fellini brought out 8.5. So Fellini is around. Sidney Poitier won Best Actor that year for Lilies of the Field. And in art, Andy Warhol brought out his very famous 8 Elvises. And I feel like if Warhol is going to win, it has to be around now as well. Roy Lichtenstein was releasing a lot of his famous works around this time. Lots of Lichtenstein's famous pieces were 63. Right. I feel like this is going to be Warhol, Lichtenstein, and Dylan, and then we'll have a runoff. And I'll put Beatles in there as well, and we'll have a runoff. So, vote, because it's the start of Beatlemania. It's Dylan on Capitol Hill. It's the start of. It's the pop art really taking off in 63. So we're going to have Bob Dylan. We're going to have Andy Warhol. We're going to have, because Warhol could have had it in 62, but I fiated Monroe, right? So Roy Lichtenstein, who is, let's face it, a major artist of this period, and a household name. So I'm gonna include him, and I'm going to include Beatles for the first time. And I'm just going to make a ruling that bands all go in at once, even though they're 4 different people. They win it together, okay? So let's do that. It's Dylan, it's Warhol, it's Lichtenstein, it's the Beatles. And then we'll have a runoff. Dylan has got, by my reckoning, another 50 chances to win. I mean, Dylan's got a lot of other chances to win. The Beatles are basically in the running every single year now until 1970. Warhol's got a couple of years left, I would say, as has Lichtenstein. But really, this is the era for those guys. This is the era for those guys. All right, Warhol has come out pretty strongly in front here with 44%. But on the Monroe rule, remember Monroe won several of these and was screwed in the runoff every time. So it's going to be Andy Warhol versus the Beatles for 63. In my opinion, it should be Warhol versus Bob Dylan for 63, but what can I do about that? Runoff. Okay, so we've got Warhol, we've got Beatles for 63. Very early for the Beatles to be in the running, but okay, here we go. Okay, Warhol is easily defeating the Beatles. So it's Warhol, who released his famous Elvis this year, but it's generally recognizing Warhol as a very important artist around this time, and Warhol wins. They're not going to come back from that. So it's Andy Warhol wins in 63. So 64 then. And we're going to have to do a third show. We'll do the third show tomorrow morning. We'll try to get to the end of the 60s in this show, and then we'll okay, so the actual winner in 1964 was boo Lyndon B. Johnson, the worst president of all time. But he did become the president. Other things that happened in 1964 include the first meeting between the Roman Catholic and Orthodox churches since the 15th century. Pope Paul VI met the Patriarch of Constantinople in Jerusalem. So Pope Paul VI probably then has to be in the running. Olympics were on that year. India backs out of a promise to hold a plebiscite over Kashmir. Cassius Clay, later Muhammad Ali, beats Sonny Liston in Miami Beach, Florida, and is crowned heavyweight champion of the world. Now, I would say Muhammad Ali is a major cultural character, right? In the following month, Cassius Clay changed his name to Muhammad Ali. So Ali is on the scene. Military overthrows the president of Brazil in a coup, starting 21 years of dictatorship in Brazil, which ends in 1985. Gemini 1 is launched, unmanned spacecraft. Sidney Poitier becomes the first African American to win an Oscar. Lyndon Johnson and Khrushchev simultaneously announced plans to cut back on nuclear weapons. Nelson Mandela makes his "I am prepared to die" speech. Lots of things going on in 64. The South Korean president Park Chung-hee declares martial law in Seoul after 10,000 student demonstrators overpower the police. I mean, Park is a significant historical figure in my mind, who is somebody who must be seen as responsible for transforming South Korea into what it is today. So he has to be in the running, I would say. Mandela is sentenced to life imprisonment in South Africa. Viet Cong forces attack the provincial capital in the Vietnam War. Rolling Stones had a gig where the riot police have to be called out of a gig in Scheveningen in the Netherlands. Goes crazy. Walt Disney has his world premiere of the film Mary Poppins in 1964, which goes on to be Disney's biggest money-making film of all time and winner of 5 Academy Awards, including Best Actress for Julie Andrews. It is the first Disney film to be nominated for Best Picture. Walt Disney is running out of chances to win it again, friends. He is going back on the ballot, okay? Disney is back on the ballot. Who else? Let's have a look. Martin Luther King is awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. Che Guevara addresses the United Nations General Assembly. A bazooka attack is launched at the headquarters of the United Nations while Che Guevara is inside. Lots of things happening. So the first port of call is: are we happy with Lyndon B. Johnson as the? Are we happy with Lyndon B. Johnson as the winner, or should he be replaced with Park Sung? I'm going to make it a straight runoff. I can't see anyone else of any kind of global significance that could take on LBJ apart from Park. Yeah, Park Chung-hee versus LBJ, I think it's going to be. Let's make the poll. LBJ versus Park. Vote. Don't worry, LBJ is such a fucking disaster. He's going to be in the running every single year until he's forcibly retired. Okay, Park Chung-hee has won, as I thought is probably right. So Park wins, recognizing his historic role in transforming South Korea. Now, on the cultural front, we have quite a lot of stuff going on. I mean, I would say the Beatles are still not quite. I mean, the actual kind of enormity of Beatlemania is getting going at this time, I would say. But I would say that 65 onwards basically is real kind of peak Beatles hours. 63 was the big breakthrough. We gave it to Warhol in that year. Hard Day's Night came out in 64 for the film and the movie. But they have a lot of other chances, I would say. 64, Dylan's got another side of. It's not quite kind of the holy trilogy for him. So I would say his best years are still ahead of him. In terms of movies, My Fair Lady, Mary Poppins, Doctor Strangelove. Doctor Strangelove is a big movie. Kubrick will have other chances, though. Walt Disney will not have other chances. Peter Sellers was around. Julie Andrews won Best Actress that year. And in terms of art, it's still basically all like Liechtenstein and Warhol basically at this time. But what books came out in 1964? So we'll look 64. Roald Dahl releases Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Okay. I mean, is Roald Dahl going to have other chances to win is the question. Let me just have a look at Roald Dahl's output when his natural year might be. Let's have a look. Just having a look at Roald Dahl's bibliography. Okay. All right, it's going to be a straight runoff. It's going to be a straight runoff between Disney and Roald Dahl. Runoff. Now, Roald Dahl could be on the ballot again. I think Walt Disney, this is his last chance to get a 3-time win. It's going to be Dahl versus Disney. Dahl versus Disney. Let's have a look. Go on, Disney. Go on, Disney. Go on, Disney. Stopping the poll. What? It's 50-50. Right. Vote again. Vote again. Vote again. Nah, fuck that. Okay, so let's carry on. Let's carry on. We've got Disney to an historic 3 times. He won in, he's the first man to win in 3 decades. He won in 28. He won in 38, and now he's won in 64. Look at that. What a legend, eh? What a legend. Actually, I've just realized we overlooked something, friends. I've just realized this. When did Disney World open? When did he make Disneyland? When did Disneyland open? Disneyland opened in 1955. When did Disney World open? Because I think creating Florida is a pretty fucking major deal as well. I've just realized that Disney World opened in 71. So when did Disney buy all the land for it? That is, Disney could win a 4th time just by making Disney World, I would say. When did he start it? He started buying up land in 59. Right, so by 65, he started constructing it in 67. Walt Disney died in 1966. Fuck-a-doodle-doo. Okay. Disney died in 66. But the very fact... So let's just say that we're giving it to him in 64, not only for Mary Poppins, but also for Disneyland and Disney World. Okay? Must be, right? Must be. Okay. Don't worry, Beatles fans. They're going to have a chance, all right? I know they were huge in 1964, but Disney has to win. I know Beatles had a big... I know the Beatles were big, all right? They're going to have their chance. They're in the running every year now for the next decade, so don't worry about it. So 65 then, the actual winner of the Time Person of the Year was General Westmoreland, the commander of the U.S. forces in South Vietnam versus during the Vietnam War. Don't like the sound of that. Let's see what else was going on in 65. The state funeral of Winston Churchill takes place in London, the largest assembly of dignitaries in the world until the funeral of John Paul II, to wild cheers and jubilations of patriots everywhere in Britain. Winston Churchill was dead. That is not actually what happened. It was a very big funeral. LBJ is sworn in as president. Sukarno, the Indonesian president, announces withdrawal of the Indonesian government from the United Nations. What else? Malcolm X is gunned down while giving a speech in Harlem. Bloody Sunday takes place as some 200 Alabama state troopers attack 525 civil rights demonstrators in Selma, Alabama, as they attempt to march the state capitol in Montgomery. The turnaround Tuesday march from Selma to Montgomery under MLK stops at the site of Bloody Sunday. Lots of Civil War bullshit, basically. Lots of this sort of stuff going on. Mary Poppins takes home 5 Oscars as Disney celebrated another Time Person of the Year award from me. What else happened? Muhammad Ali knocks out Sonny Liston in the first round of their championship rematch with a phantom punch at Central Main Civic Centre in Lewiston. Ali in the mix still. Police in Algiers break up demonstrations. Edward Heath becomes leader of the Conservative Party. Lyndon B. Johnson announces his order to increase the number of troops in Vietnam. Johnson signs a law penalising the burning of draft cards with up to 5 years in prison and a $1,000 fine. Pakistani troops enter Kashmir. Lots of things going on. Constantine II of Greece, the King of Greece, forms a new government with Prime Minister Stefan Poulos. Thunderbirds debuts on ITV in the United Kingdom. Fidel Castro announces that Che Guevara has resigned and left Cuba. Other things happen as well. Lots of things going on. I feel Charles de Gaulle announces that he will stand for re-election. He was 75 years old at that time. Charles de Gaulle is re-elected in France, so de Gaulle is back. Ferdinand Marcos becomes the 10th president of the Philippines. He was there for a very long time. David Lean's film Dr. Zhivago, starring Omar Sharif and Julie Christie, is released. So yes, those are the things that happened. Are we happy with William Westmoreland as the Time Person of the Year? Yes or no? Stick or twist? I did not put Park in bold. Park is not in bold. Yeah, okay. I think it's between LBJ and Sukarno, basically. Pulling out of the UN is a fucking massive move that happened. Sukarno is a very major character who's somewhat forgotten about these days. I think we're going to say it's Sukarno versus LBJ, who's going to be in the running until he's gone, basically, because he's that much of a troublemaker. Going to ask people to vote. Sukarno versus LBJ. In terms of biggest selling records that year, I mean, let's have a look what was going on. Oh, the Grammys are hopeless. I'm going to like the Grammys are just fucking pathetic, right? The Beatles and Dylan are around, and the Grammys are going to the Barbra Streisand album, or Cotton Candy, or the Pink Panther soundtrack, and shit like this. They're so out of sync with what was actually happening in the culture. They caught up by the end of the 60s, but they completely missed the boat on the British invasion. The Grammys did. It's just an embarrassment looking at their list. I mean, I think okay, so the vote is over, and Sukarno has won the vote, so Sukarno wins Time Person of the Year for 65. In terms of cultural, Muhammad Ali is around. Okay. What books were written in 65? I feel like this is another Dylan Beatles runoff. Don't see any particularly important books around that year. In art, we've got Norman Rockwell has appeared on the scene. There's still a lot of Roy Lichtenstein. Francis Bacon's Crucifixion came out that year. It's still Lichtenstein dominating, really, though, as far as I can see. I'm pretty sure, film-wise, Sound of Music, Dr. Zhivago with David Lean, Lee Marvin, Richard Burton was in The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. Yeah, they're not like big films. Julie Andrews was in Sound of Music. I mean, Julie Andrews, she'd just been in Mary Poppins and then she was in Sound of Music. That's fucking pretty big, you know. Julie Andrews had a banging 64, 65, didn't she? Dylan Went Electric in 65. Beatles released, what did they release in 65? Help, basically, wasn't it? This is the kind of serious turn in the Beatles. Help, Ticket to Ride, Hard Day's Night, Rubber Soul is 65 as well. Dylan brought out Bringing It All Back Home in 65. Highway 61, is that 65? Is Highway 61 revisited 65? Fucking hell. Highway 61 is 65. Okay. Highway 61 is 65. Rubber Soul is 65. This is a big year. Big year. Okay, so I'm going to say vote is going to be between Beatles, Julie Andrews, who, I'm sorry, but if you were in Mary Poppins and Sound of Music back to back, that is massive. Bob Dylan, who had by far his best year to date in 65. And who else did we say? Who else did we say? There was somebody else who was on the horizon. I've forgotten who it was now. Who was the other person who was in the mix that we said? I'm completely forgetting who it was. Muhammad Ali. Okay, so Muhammad Ali. Let us vote. It was Ali. Yeah. Beatles, Andrews, Dylan, Ali. Julie Andrews comfortably winning. She's taking an early lead. Julie Andrews, big lead. I mean, Beatles are going to have lots of chances to win. Julie Andrews will never have another chance to win. Andrews has won. It's going to be Andrews versus the Beatles for 65. Andrews versus the Beatles. Okay. Julie Andrews takes on the Beatles. Vote. Andrews versus the Beatles. Andrews absolutely smashing this poll. Andrews smashing the poll. Beatles are nowhere. Okay, so Julie Andrews has won Time Person of the Year. Yeah, I think it's correct, Julie Andrews. I mean, come on. Mary Poppins, Sound of Music, back to back. You know, huge cultural achievement from Andrews. 66 now. And the actual Time Person of the Year was The Inheritor. The Inheritor. Representing a generation of American men and women aged 25 and under, the baby boom generation who in 1966 made up nearly half the population and were influential both in the counterculture of the 60s and drafted as soldiers into the Vietnam War. The face of most prominently seen on the cover representing the generation was Thomas M. McLaughlin. So the baby boomer generation were just given an award, just like that. In 66, they're like, yeah, we're going to give it to the boomers. And it was called the Inheritor. I fucking hate the boomers. They're just disgusting. They just gave it to the boomers as a generation. Oh, yeah, here you go. You're the inheritors. Have the earth. What else happened in 1966? Absolutely fucking... I just hate Time magazine. It's one thing I've learned from this. I hate Time magazine. Lyndon B. Johnson states that the United States should stay in South Vietnam until communist aggression is ended. There's a coup in Nigeria. Prime Minister Abu Abaka is killed. Indira Gandhi becomes Prime Minister of India. Prime Minister Moro resigns in Italy after a power struggle within his party. Labour Party unexpectedly retained the seat of Hull North in a by-election. United Kingdom ceases all trade with Rhodesia. Boo, fake and gay. There's a coup d'etat in Syria. And Amin al-Hafez is overthrown and replaced with Saleh Jadid, that is the Ba'athist Party of Syria, come to power. But wasn't he, now correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Assad's father, somehow he takes over from Jadid at some point. But the Ba'athist Party take power in Syria. Charles de Gaulle asks Lyndon B. Johnson for negotiations about the state of NATO equipment in France. Gemini 8 conducts its first space docking. FIFA's World Cup trophy is stolen in the exhibition in London. It is later found by a mongrel dog named Pickles and his owner, David Corbett, wrapped in a newspaper in a South London garden. So Pickles the dog, who found the Jules Rimet trophy, is in contention for Time Person of the Year, I would say. Pickles. Pope Paul VI meets Michael Ramsey, the Archbishop of Canterbury, gives him a ring. Indira Gandhi goes to Washington. Harold Wilson leads the Labour Party to a general election victory in Britain. I hate all of the British governments, but no British Prime Minister is going to win this until 1997, I'm telling you. Maybe Thatcher will have a... I think Thatcher's got a very strong 83. If I was to have to call it forward, I would say 83. An anti-Nasser campaign conspiracy is exposed in Egypt, put down by base Nasser. I have got a real respect for Nasser, by the way. Going through all these details, Nasser was based, in my opinion. Haile Selassie visits Jamaica for the first time and meets with Rastafarian Rasta leaders. Ian Brady and Myra Hindley go to trial for the Moors murders. Lots and lots of things happening in 66. Roni in May. This is absolutely action-packed. Fidel Castro declares martial law in Cuba because of a possible US attack. The boat ride It's a Small World opens in Disneyland. So many things happening. The Vatican abolishes Index Liborium Prohibitorium. CIA chief William Raborn resigns and Richard Helms replaces him. There's a revolution in Argentina with a military junta deposing the president and a coup. That is Juan Carlos Onania Carballo takes over. Epic moustache. Lots of things going on. So many things. Just too many things happening. US announces the Lockheed U-2 reconnaissance plane has disappeared over Cuba. Bob Dylan is injured in a motorcycle accident near his home in Woodstock and is not seen in public for over a year. That he also released Blonde on Blonde in '66, I want to say. What else happened? Caesar's Palace Hotel was opened in Las Vegas. Just lots of things happening. Salazar Bridge opens in Lisbon. Salazar's still there. The Beatles end their tour in the United States with a concert in San Francisco. It is their last performance as a live touring band. That's in '66. And I imagine that those 66 gigs were fucking mental. I imagine. What else happened? There's so many things. The Bin Tai massacre in the Vietnam War. France and the Soviet Union sign a cooperation treaty for nuclear research. Walt Disney records his final filmed appearance before his death, detailing his plans for Epcot Center and a utopian planned city to be built in Florida. I would like everybody to put F's in the chat for Walt Disney. F's in the chat for Walt Disney, everybody. There's so many things happening. Screen actor Ronald Reagan is elected governor of California. Jack L. Warner sells Warner Brothers to the Seven Arts Production Company. There's just so much going on. The Beatles begin recording Sgt. Pepper in the Abbey Road Studios in London. There's just so much going on. Walt Disney, the founder of the Disney Brothers Studios, dies. Ian Smith declares that Rhodesia is already a republic. Okay, just so much stuff. I would say that, and I should have mentioned that the winner was the Boomers, basically, right? So, obviously, we can't have the Inheritors winning. So, we have to say Ian Smith has to be in contention, I would say. Ian Smith's in contention. Too early for Reagan. I reckon Pope Paul VI is in contention, you know. He seems to be a bit of a mover and shaker. Another thing that happened in '66 that I didn't mention is that Leonid Brezhnev became the General Secretary of the Soviet Union. So Khrushchev is gone. Brezhnev is in. So Brezhnev has to be on the ticket, I would say. Brezhnev. What a dour old bastard he was. And LBJ, of course, is still around, causing absolute fucking havoc. All right, I reckon it's between Ian Smith, LBJ, and what did Mao do? What did Mao do in '66? What did Mao do in '66, Noah? Cultural Revolution started. Right. It's Mao, isn't it? It's Mao. It's Mao. It's Mao. We can't argue with those stats, I don't think. Can't argue with those stats. It's Mao, whichever way you look at it. There's no need for a poll. It's Mao. It's just too important. It's just too important, basically. It's Mao. So 66 Beatles have what did Beatles actually bring out in '66? Nothing. I think they were just touring, were they? Revolver. Revolver came out in 66. Revolver. So we've got Beatles, Revolver, Dylan, Blonde on Blonde, and his motorcycle accident. In film, we've got in film. What have we got? Frank Zinnemann won Best Director for Man for All Seasons. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf came out that year. And Elizabeth Taylor won Best Actress that year. I don't know if that's... And obviously, Richard Burton was great in that movie as well. Paul Scofield won for Man for All Seasons. In terms of books for 66... We've got Tom Stoppard's Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. It's not big enough. Jean Rhys, Wide Sargasso Sea, a fucking atrocious thing we were made to read in school. Magic Finger by Roald Dahl. It's not big enough. It's not. None of this stuff is big enough. Fantastic Voyage by Isaac Asimov came out. Asimov's had his chance, I reckon. And for 66, we've got... I mean, Beatles are looking strong for 66. The Beach Boys released Pet Sounds in 66. Adam West Batman was out in 66. Right. I'm gonna put, and of course, England won the World Cup in 1966. Right. Let us put in. Okay, so the England World Cup winning football team. England World Cup 66 team. We can't really put the whole team in there, can we? We would have to say... it would have to be the manager, really, wouldn't it? Which is... I mean, there's Pickles the dog. There's Jeff Hurst, who scored the hat-trick in the final, of course. There's the captain, Bobby Moore. And the manager, Alf Ramsey. All right, so we're going to put Alf Ramsey. Okay, so, right. Voot. It's going to be Alf Ramsey for England winning the World Cup. It's going to be the Beatles for being the Beatles in 1966. It's going to be Bob Dylan for being Bob Dylan in 1966. And it's going to be the Beach Boys for being the Beach Boys in 1966. So let's see who wins. I mean, it's literally 1966, so it's going to be very boomer, isn't it? It's going to be extremely boomer because we're right in peak boomer world here. So, surprisingly, the Beach Boys have won. We're going to have to go to a runoff, but the Beach Boys are winning. I'm going to let it get to up to 100, up to 100 here. I feel like there's far too much like weird American pride coming in here. Pet Sounds is a very important album, though. So, Beach Boys are winning. Okay, so it's going to be Beach Boys versus Beatles in a straight runoff. So let's have the runoff. The runoff is Beatles versus Beach Boys. It seems like I mean, I put a soccer team on there because, you know, England won the World Cup in 1966. So I mean, if it was me, I would have had Bob Dylan winning in 63. I think Dylan should have won in 63. And I think he'll probably win again. He should have won in 65, probably. But Julie Andrews won. So I'm not going to argue. All right, let's stop the poll. It has been won by the Beatles. The Beatles have won. And I think when all is said and done, that is probably the correct answer. The Beatles probably should win. Beatles probably should have won in 64 and 65 as well, if we're honest. But, yeah, the Beatles are represented. Okay, so I reckon Dylan should have won at least one of those years. But, anyway, let's carry on. So 1967, Time Man of the Year actually was Lyndon B. Johnson. Johnson was president of the United States from 1963 to 1969. Time noted it had been a year of setbacks and failures for Johnson, with race riots across the USA, deepening involvement in the Vietnam War, and the Dump Johnson movement within his own party. So Johnson was picked as Time Man of the Year for being an all-around douchebag and loser. What else happened in 1967 other than Johnson being a douche? Charlie Chaplin releases his last film, A Countess from Hong Kong, in the UK. The Summer of Love, The Human Being, takes place in the Golden Gate part of San Francisco, setting the stage for the Summer of Love in 1967. The Parliament of the United Kingdom decides to nationalise 90% of the nation's steel industry. That was a good move, wasn't it? What else happened? Apollo 1, US astronauts Grissom, White, and Chaffee are killed when a fire breaks out in their Apollo spacecraft during the launch. Protests. The American Basketball Association is formed. Suharto takes power from Sukarno in Indonesia. So now we have Suharto taking over from Sukarno. We have Joseph Stalin's daughter, Svetlana Alieva, defects to the United States via the US Embassy in New Delhi. The body of US President John F. Kennedy is moved to a permanent burial place in Arlington. The Grateful Dead released their first debut album. Pope Paul VI issues the Populorum Progressio. Johnson signs the Consular Treaty. Martin Luther King denounces the Vietnam War. George Pompidou begins to form the next French government. The 6-Day War breaks out in Israel, or between Israel and the Arab nations. Fidel Castro announces that all intellectual property belongs to the people in Cuba. Elvis Presley marries Priscilla in Las Vegas. Jimi Hendrix Experience release Are You Experienced? Syria mobilizes against Israel. NASA of Egypt demands withdrawal of the UN peacekeeping emergency force in Sinai, and the UN Secretary General complies. There's NASA again. Andropov becomes the chief of the KGB in the Soviet Union. The Beatles release Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. nicknamed the soundtrack to the Summer of Love. The USS Liberty incident. A US Navy ship is attacked by Israeli forces, apparently in error, killing 34 people in the crew. Egypt severs diplomatic relations with the United States. Six-day war ends. Israel and Syria agree to a mediated ceasefire. Race riot in Tampa, Florida. So many things happening in this era. There's been a massive uptick in incidents in the 60s, we noticed. So many things going on. The first UK colour television broadcasts begin on BBC Two. All You Need Is Love by the Beatles is released in the UK. The Bee Gees released their first album, Bee Gees First. More Detroit riots take place in Detroit. Tragic event. American Nazi Party leader George Lincoln Rockwell is assassinated in Arlington County in Virginia. So that happened as well. So many things going on. Che Guevara and his guerrilla men are captured in Bolivia and are executed the following day. So Che Guevara is executed in Bolivia. Disney releases The Jungle Book, the last animated film personally supervised by Walt Disney himself. So there is a chance for Disney to be on the ballot, although it's spurious, I would claim. Lyndon B. Johnson holds a secret meeting group called with the prestigious leaders called the Wise Men about the Vietnam crisis. Congress in Colombia, the US. Okay, lots and lots and lots of things happening. Beatles release Magical Mystery Tour film and album. Okay, so, and Fernand Braudel, the great historian, begins the publication of his Civilization book, which I talked about the other day. All right, so do we agree? Do we stick or twist with Lyndon B. Johnson? Stick or twist? Write it down in the chat. Walt Disney can't win because he's dead. I've just realised that. He died last year, didn't he? So he can't win again. We're twisting from LBJ. I mean, as far as I can see, NASA has to be back on the ballot, really. NASA is a fucking beast, to tell you. Who else would be on the ballot apart from NASA? Martin Luther King, maybe? He was assassinated the following year. Che Guevara. It's got a chart. I mean, he was assassinated, but I mean, think about this, right? He leads a revolution in Cuba, then leads another band of guerrilla warriors in Bolivia. You know, he lived the heroic dream, didn't he? Guevara did. Yeah, I mean, there's so much going on at this time. The 6-day war, I would say, is significant. Yeah, there's just so much going on. I think it's NASA again. Who disagrees? Who disagrees with NASA being it? Che or NASA, I think. Let's make it Che versus NASA. Che versus NASA. That means that LBJ is not winning it, though. I'm going to put LBJ on the ballot because I feel like LBJ should be recognized somewhere. Vote. It's LBJ or NASA, I think, but let's have a look. Che was assassinated in this year, but he also led He also led guerrilla army in Bolivia. Yeah, we haven't given it to Che in any other year. Che has not won it at all. Look, we gave it to Castro in 59, but Che, not to Che. Oh, it's close. The vote is very split. It's very split very evenly here. It's very evenly split. It's a tie. The fuck? It's a tie. I can't believe it. It's a tie. Vote harder, everybody. Vote. If you haven't voted, vote now. Vote now. Vote now. That is absolutely ridiculous. Come on. Okay, Che is pulled in front. Let's just end this poll. Okay, well, we're going to have a runoff between Che and LBJ. Because this is then LBJ's last chance as well. Che's last chance. Last chance saloon. Runoff. NASA is out. NASA already won, though. NASA won already. NASA won here in 56 for the Suez. Tell you what, NASA, very significant person. If you're a Zoomer, some of this is an education, isn't it? You must have learned something in these streams so far. You must have learned something. Yeah, NASA was a boss. I really do agree. Okay, so LBJ versus Che has come out with Che winning pretty handily. So Che Guevara is our man of the year in 1967 to coincide with his assassination. And now we come to the small matter of the cultural award. And I mean, is it just the Beatles again? Because the Beatles brought out Sgt. Pepper. Sgt. Pepper didn't come out until 68, though, did it? No, it came out in 67. Okay, so Sgt. Pepper came out in 67. Yes. Sgt. Pepper for 67. Is there anyone else even in the same ballpark? Velvet Underground and Nico came out that year. The Doors were around. Jimi Hendrix was around. But the Beatles also released Magical Mystery Tour that year as well. What books came out in 1967? Let's have a look. Poor old Agatha Christie. She just pumped them out every single year, didn't she? And in terms of paintings, David Hockney's Biggest Splash came out in 67. I feel like Hockney should be on there for that painting. So I'm going to include Hockney. Hockney's on the ballot. He is significant enough. Katharine Hepburn won Best Actress. She has been cruelly overlooked year after year after year by the horribly misogynist voters here. Dustin Hoffman was in The Graduate that year. Mike Nichols directed The Graduate that year. Nah, not strong enough. Not strong enough. Okay, so it's going to be the Beatles versus David Hockney, basically. Truman Capote was on the ballot. Capote was on the ballot, friends, and he lost, right? He lost. So vote. And we're going to say Beatles versus David Hockney. Bearing in mind the Beatles brought out Sgt. Pepper and Magical Mystery Tour in 67. It's the Beatles easily. The Beatles have smashed it. Okay, so the Beatles win easily. We're not gonna. I don't bother running the poll if it's so, one-sided. I just stop it. Let's carry on. 68 was won by, in actuality, the Apollo 8 astronauts. In 1968, the American crew of Apollo 8 became the first two humans to travel below the low orbit, orbiting the moon and paving the way for the first manned moon landings in 1969. Now, I feel like if we're going to give it to some astronauts, it has to be the guys who did the moon landings, surely. And given rules established earlier in 1961, astronauts are counted as cultural figures for reasons not quite known. Basically, because we gerrymandered the vote to allow Ray Kroc to be in there. So let us carry on then. So in 68, we got the Prague Spring. We got the French submarine Minerve sunk in the Mediterranean Sea, killing 52. The Israeli submarine, the INS Dakar, sinks in the Mediterranean Sea, killing 59. Tet offensive started in Vietnam by the Viet Cong. 68 Olympic Games happen in Grenoble in France. Battle of Saigon ends in the Vietnam War. Lyndon B. Johnson barely edges out anti-war candidate Eugene McCarthy in New Hampshire, a vote which highlights the deep divisions in the country and the party over Vietnam. The United States Congress repeals the requirement for a gold reserve to back UN's currency, officially ending the gold standard. Boo. The assassination of Martin Luther King. MLK is shot in Memphis, Tennessee. The Apollo 6 is launched. Okay. So lots of things happening. West Brom won the FA Cup. Winning goal was scored by Jeff Assel. Pope Paul VI publishes another book on birth control. He's been very active, this Pope, in publishing stuff, hasn't he? Swaziland becomes independent. Tet offensive comes to an end in South Vietnam. Lots and lots of things. Led Zeppelin make their first live performance in Surrey, England. The film Oliver, based on the musical, becomes a hit and being released, and it wins the Academy Award for Best Picture. That's the 1960 Oliver. Mao Zedong advocates that educated urban youth in China be sent for re-education in the countryside. It marks the start of the Up the Mountains, Down the Villages movement in China. Apollo 8, as we heard about, and the Khmer Rouge is officially formed in Cambodia. So I'm not happy with these astronauts winning. I feel like that is not really right. I mean, Martin Luther King was assassinated, so we could put MLK in. We could put MLK in. We could put MLK in. Who else is even around? Who should suggest some names, people? Nixon was next year, really, isn't it? Nixon for 68, not 67. Nixon 68. Suggest political leaders, friends. LBJ, the last trial. Okay. Shall we just put in Lyndon B. Johnson? We'll finally put in Lyndon B. Johnson. What an absolute shit show his time in charge was, from beginning to end. But let us now have a look at. Oh, we are in 68. Oh, sorry, we are in 68. Oh, it has to be Tricky Dicky then, doesn't it? It has to be Richard Nixon. I mean, it's just obvious. It has to be Nixon. Has to be Nixon. LBJ's, he's cooked his goose, as my mother would say. He's cooked his goose. He's never going to do it. So that brings us on now to the small matter of the cultural awards. And I mean, the Beatles have won 2 years in a row now. Could we possibly give it to them a third year in a row? In 1968, they released the White Album only. I would say if they're not going to win in the 60s, late 60s, this would be the year that they don't win. As far as I remember, Dylan had a year off in 68. Wasn't Dylan with his motorcycle accident? Or was that 67 that he's away? Velvet Underground released White Light, White Heat, Odyssey and Oracle by the Zombies. Kinks Are the Village Green Preservation Society came out. Johnny Cash, Folsom Prison. Beggar's Banquet by Rolling Stones. I mean, there's a lot of very important big acts around at this time. In the music world, we're going to say that Joan Didion published Slouching Towards Bethlehem. Arthur C. Clarke published 2001 Space Odyssey. Arthur C. Clarke could be in with a shout, maybe. In terms of painters, Warhol does Another Campbell Soup. MC Escher does that Metamorphosis 3. Nah, not a lot happening in the art world, I don't think. Francis Bacon is still around, but they're not going to be. In the world of film, Katharine Hepburn wins Best Actress again. Fucking hell. How many she won? Katharine Hepburn's won Best Actress basically every year, as far as I can tell. How many did she win? Bloody hell. List of awards won by Katharine Hepburn. She won in 1934, 1968, 1969, and 1982. Maybe Katharine Hepburn should be put on the ballot at some point, because I mean, it is. She just seems to win every year. John Wayne was in True Grit in 1969. So John Wayne's going to have his chance soon, I would say, next year. But he was not in a big film in 1968. Carol Reed directed Oliver. Stanley Kubrick directed 2001 Space Odyssey. So Kubrick is on the ballot for the first time. Kubrick is on the ballot. It's just Kubrick, isn't it? It's just Kubrick, or shall we put a music act on there as well? I think it's just Kubrick by Fiat. Just Stanley Kubrick by Fiat, I would say. No need to even have a poll. So let's carry on. It's just easily Kubrick, right? So let us now have 69, and this will be the final one we do on this show. I will then, when I wake up tomorrow, I'm gonna do the 70s at the very least tomorrow, and then we'll see how it goes. I may have to do like an even fourth show and fifth show. I'll just carry on doing them until we finish. Okay, so I think it's quite fun though. It's quite fun doing this, right? So 69. Oh, fucking hell, I hate these awards. 1969, the official Time Person of the Year was the Middle Americans. The Middle Americans. Conservative small-town Americans, also referred to as the silent majority. Time saw Middle America as the driving force behind Richard Nixon's 1968 election win, the background of the American astronauts of Apollo 11, and the conservative side of debates on social issues such as school desegregation, prayer in public schools, sex education, and drugs policy. So they decided to give it to the Middle Americans, which is basically the Bible Belt, right? The Bible Belt one. That was Time's gay little way of not giving it to Richard Nixon, I would say. What else? In terms of big records, in 69, okay, so what actually happened in 1969? Let's have a look, first of all. Government of Spain hands over Ifni to Morocco. Richard Nixon is sworn in as president. There's assassination attempts on Leonid Brezhnev by deserter Victor Ilyin. 14 men, 9 of them Jews, are executed in Baghdad for spying for Israel. Yasser Arafat is elected as the PLO leader at the Palestinian National Congress in Cairo. So Yasser Arafat makes his first appearance in 1969. John Lennon and Yoko Ono are married in Gibraltar and proceed to their honeymoon bed-in for peace in Amsterdam. Yuck. Pope Paul VI increases the number of Catholic cardinals by 1/3, from 101 to 134. The body of former US President Dwight D. Eisenhower is brought to by caisson to the United States Capitol to lie in the Capitol Rotunda. The Mass of Paul VI is promulgated in the Catholic Church by the Pope. Charles de Gaulle steps down as president of France, suffering defeat in a referendum the day before. President of India dies, Zakir Hussain. Lots and lots of things. Franco orders that the closing of the Gibraltar-Spain border and communications between Gibraltar and Spain in response to the 1967 Gibraltar sovereignty referendum. The border remains closed until a partial reopening on December the 15th, 1982. President Nixon visits South Vietnamese president in the Midway Island. Nixon announces that 25,000 US troops are going to be withdrawn from Vietnam. Stonewall riots occur, a milestone in modern gay rights movement in the United States. Just the football war starts after Honduras loses an association football match against El Salvador. And I actually learned about this when I met a guy from Honduras at a party I was at once. He was like, yeah, I'm from, like, did you know about the football war? So that was interesting. So but anyway, it happened then. Yeah, they went to war over a football match. Incredible. Henry Kissinger is making moves, trying to negotiate for Vietnam. On orders from Charles Manson, members of the Manson family invade the Los Angeles home of film director Roman Polanski and murder his pregnant wife, the actress Sharon Tate, and 4 others, which is pretty horrible. And that film by Tarantino kind of is based on those events, I believe. What else happened? Ho Chi Minh dies. So Ho Chi Minh, the president of Vietnam, dies. Did we give it to Ho Chi Minh? Yeah, 55. We gave it to him. Okay. Beatles released their 11th studio album, Abbey Road. And the Zodiac Killer is on the loose. Pele scores his 1,000th goal. Pele. Should we recognize Pele? We've ignored Pele so far. He should probably be on the ballot at some point. Yes. When did Pele win the World Cup last? When did Pele win the World Cup last? Let's have a look. 1970. Did they win in 1970? Brazil? Okay, so 1970 is going to be Pele's year. We have to remember that Pele for 1970 is basically an iron-plated gold certification. Pele's win in 1970. I don't care what anyone says. Pele wins in 1970, without doubt. All right then. So the actual winner that year was the Middle Americans, so it can't be them. Do we just give it to Nixon again? Or do we give it to someone else? And if so, who do we give it to? Who is even in the running? Kissinger? I mean, he didn't really do anything that profound in 1969. Gaddafi came to power in Libya in 1969. So Gaddafi is on the map. Do we give it to Gaddafi for coming to power in Libya? Gaddafi is in the building. I feel like Yasser Arafat is in there. He becomes the leader of the PLO. I feel like Gaddafi is the most significant character. Yeah, but we gave it to Nixon won the election in 1968, so we gave it to him then. We gave it to Nixon in 1968. You can't just win it every year. So, in terms of the politics, I'm just going to give it to Gaddafi. I mean, when else is he going to win it? Maybe for Lockerbie or something like that. So we give it to Gaddafi. And people are saying Neil Armstrong for the moon landings. Yeah, I mean, the moon landings happened in 1969. In terms of records, the Beatles are done now, basically. It's Abbey Road and Let It Be. Abbey Road and Let It Be. Bookends by Simon and Garfunkel. Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. Johnny Cash did At San Quentin. In terms of films, Midnight Cowboy by John Schlesinger came out. John Wayne wins for True Grit, Best Actor. I think this is John Wayne's real chance to win right here. John Wayne. A real chance to win, I feel. So I'm going to put John Wayne on the ballot. I'm going to put, yeah, John Wayne's on the ballot. I'm going to put John Wayne's on the ballot. Should the Beatles be on the ballot is the question for their final real year together. In the Court, the Crimson King came out in 1969. Velvet Underground had their last album in 1969. Nick Drake was around. Led Zeppelin came out in 1969. The Kinks brought out Arthur in 1969. None of them are bigger than the Beatles, though, are they? That's the thing. I feel like it's going to be... Right, let's do a runoff here. Let's do a runoff. We're going to do a runoff. Voot, right? We're going to have Neil Armstrong. We're going to have John Wayne. We're going to have the Beatles for their last chance to win, to make it a hat trick for the 60s. And we're going to have... Who was the other person I said? Who were the other... Who else did we say? Not Simon and Garfunkel. They're not... I like Midnight Cowboy as well. I swear I said somebody else then. I've forgotten who it was now. Pele is 70, locked in, cert. Who else did I say? Somebody remind me. Not Cash. It wasn't Cash. Who was the other person I said? I can't remember now. Not Kings. Let me just have a look at books a minute. I'm just going to have a look at books for 69. Philip Roth published Portnoy's Complaint. Agatha Christie still absolutely pumping out Philip K. Dick. None of these people are going to win. No, I think it's the Duke. It's the Duke versus the Beatles versus Neil Armstrong. I don't see anyone else of that magnitude, really. All right, so let's leave it there then. It's going to be a three-way, and then there's going to be a runoff. It's going to be a three-way and a runoff. Velvet Underground, Nick Drake, and Led Zepp are not at this point. They're not bigger than the Beatles in 69, I'm afraid. There's a lot of anti-Neil Armstrong. There's a lot of anti-space rhetoric in the chat going on. Lots of schizo pill people in the chat about the moon landings. Who did I mention earlier? Caravaggio? Velvet Underground. Yeah, none of them are big enough, I'm afraid. Okay, Neil Armstrong is winning pretty handily here. So it's going to be Neil Armstrong versus John Wayne. John Wayne versus Neil Armstrong. And if it goes like the first vote, it's going to easily be Armstrong. But let's have a look. Runoff. The Beatles are out. That's it for the Beatles. The Beatles are two-time winners. Dylan had nothing from the 60s. Didn't even get a look in. Competition just too strong. I feel like 65 was Dylan's year to win, and Julie Andrews won. A lot of anti-John Wayne. Why is there so much anti-John Wayne? Lots of anti-John Wayne rhetoric in the chat. Lots of anti-Moon rhetoric in the chat. Armstrong winning. Okay, Neil Armstrong won. Okay, so we finished Muammar Gaddafi and Neil Armstrong is our final pairing. We're going to have to finish this up tomorrow now. At the current rate, I foolishly thought that it would be quicker doing these eras where we're more familiar, but actually it's become harder because there are more people, and it becomes harder and harder every year as more and more stuff happens. So we're going to finish this up tomorrow in the daytime. It has to be in the daytime because in the nighttime I'm with AAA tomorrow. But as soon as I get up, I'll try to, run the stream fairly quickly. There's been a few super chats. It was mainly people joining the channel. Welcome, new members. I'm happy that you're here. Geezer30 says it needs to be Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay. No joint. Only if they're a band like the Beatles do you get joint. Sensum Comenium says, AA, hello AA, hope you're doing well. Have you ever tried the Taylor Swift special at KFC? You get 2 tiny breasts, 2 skinny thighs, and a left wing. Canan Banana says, amazing stream. Thank you, AA. Crispy GT has given $3 Australian. Thank you very much. It means so much. Frederick 1483 says, vote John Wayne or you hate America. Well, I'm sorry, Frederick, but the Duke lost to Neil Armstrong. All right, so thank you very much. We will return tomorrow. Even if it takes me 20 streams, I'm determined to finish this now. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to go and collapse in a heap because this was almost 4 hours. See you tomorrow, where we will continue. Do buy my courses, 25% off using promo code VAXGLIDE2. But most importantly of all, get out.
What goes on in this town is none of your business.
As long as I'm living here, it is.
Then maybe you shouldn't be living here!
Well, that's easily